You are listening to Horror Game Developer, My Games Aren't That Scary. By Entril J.I. Novels from Novelfire. Chapter 481, The Butcher 7. Crack. The ground cracked as the anomaly wearing the horse hat rushed forward, hacking down on the ground with its large, muscular body. I just barely avoided its attack before the pig head attacked me. Its movements were just as fast as the horse head. Swoosh. Taking a step back and sucking in my stomach, the blade just barely grazed my apron as a shadow cast behind me. I could feel the presence of the other anomaly, trying to grab me from behind, but before its arms could close down on me, I activated trait transfer once more, and a biting cold pressed on me from all directions. The surroundings changed as the anomalies faded. I was now in the other world. Without wasting a second, I turned around and brought my hand up, hacking down with all my might as I deactivated trait transfer, and the world returned to how it was, the back of the anomaly now facing my direction. Spurt. It was a direct hit. Blood spurted in all directions as the knife quietly absorbed the blood, my eyes gleaming at the sight as my breathing similarly grew harsher. Unfortunately, that attack didn't appear to be enough to kill the anomaly. Despite the massive injury, the anomaly still managed to turn its head, the ruined body twisting unnaturally as it revealed the head of a cow. Its mouth opened with a low, dragging creak, as though something inside it was forcing the jaw apart. And then, I started laughing, shutting whatever attack. It was attempting down as I brought my blade towards its neck and slashed down cleanly. Thud. With a low thud, the head fell and the body followed right after. Blood pooled across the floor as I held onto my mouth, trying to keep my smile in check, feeling a sudden tickle in the middle of my chest. Not now, not now. Looking at the knife, I knew that its influence was growing. But that wasn't all. My head was fucked up, I knew that much. The knife was just letting me let loose. Swoosh. The anomalies didn't give me time to think. With one down, the other two came rushing at me, one from the left and one from the right. I didn't have the time to think. But I didn't need to think as I already knew what I needed to do as I looked towards the horse head, its arm reaching up as it gathered enough momentum to slash at me. This time, I wasn't able to hold my smile back. Trait transfer. Time suddenly slowed. Staring at the anomaly, my grip over the knife tightened as several dots and red lines appeared on the charging anomaly. I memorized each line carefully while looking behind me and noting the other anomalies' attack trajectory. I could feel my nodes strain under the heavy usage of trait transfer, but I paid no real mind to it as time soon returned to normal and I sprang into action, using every little bit of built-up tension in my muscles to shoot towards the horse head anomaly. Knife in hand, I followed the trajectories that I remembered perfectly. SWOSH. With the sudden burst in speed, I distanced myself just enough to avoid the pig head anomaly's attack, while also getting close enough to the horse anomaly to slash at its armpit and several of its vital areas. Spurt. The moment was quick. I didn't even look back at the other anomaly. The moment I slashed in the directions that I wanted to, I used the little remaining strength that I had to dash away. My lungs burned as I gasped for air, sweat pooling down the sides of my face as blood dripped down from the side of my blade. Thud. Soon the eventual thud came, signaling the fall of the anomaly. Not yet done, I'm not yet done. Without wasting time, I turned to face the remaining anomaly. The pig head. It stood not far from me, its gaze directed my way as its eyes gleamed under the dim lights of the slaughterhouse. Staring at the anomaly, I took the anomaly's lack of action as a chance to catch my breath. The entire sequence of events probably lasted no longer than a couple of seconds, but those couple of seconds were enough to drain a lot of my energy, especially my nodes, as I started to clearly feel the pain in my mind. Despite this, I can still go in. This much was still acceptable. I could continue this for several more rounds, and catching my breath, I held the knife tighter. I prepared myself to get rid of the last anomaly. But, the moment I prepared to act, something unexpected occurred. The anomaly, which had been so fiercely staring at me a moment prior, turned around and dashed away from me, its body moving past the numerous chains. The sight caught me completely off guard, my eyes blinking slowly as I tried to understand what was going on. But soon, a certain thought crossed my mind as I stared in the direction of where the anomaly ran. Is this a trap, or did it just run away? It can't be, right? But after thinking for a while, I realized that it was possible. After a certain point, anomalies weren't just mindless monsters. They could think for themselves, and it wasn't out of the question that they would run away from me. Of course, I was more inclined to believe it was guiding me towards a trap. But this worked for me. Holding onto the knife, I followed along. I hope it leads me right to the boss. I really hoped it would. Space. Bang. The smell of gunpowder drifted through the air as a body fell, the echo of the shot lingering longer than it should have. It's done. Elias lowered his gun while looking at the numerous anomalies scattered around him. How many does that make? 15, not bad. Catherine complimented, sitting on a crate in the distance as she smiled at everyone present. Some were a little tired, but in general, everyone was faring quite well. The gate had yet to deviate from the norm. This was good. I've already counted all of the points for everyone. There are a few that need to get some kills quickly. You might get dropped, but so far, so good. Let's take some time to rest before going into the next room. Once we manage to get through enough rooms, the difficulty will rise. Catherine had all the rules and layout of the gate noted down in her mind. This wasn't the first time that she had been in the gate and was in fact quite familiar with it. Thus, she wasn't worried at all. In fact, in terms of points, she had the fewest. But of course, everyone knew the reason wasn't that she lacked skills. She just didn't plan on doing anything until the end. It does seem like Elias has gotten better. Catherine carefully studied Elias as the gun faded from his hand. He was a rather exceptional member of her group, of the conceptualization decree. With his skills, he was able to create guns that were strong enough to kill anomalies. He was an indispensable member of her team. The same could be said for Andreas and Marcus. Pursing her lips, Catherine noted everything down while also looking at the other members. For the World Congress, she needed the best available team if she wanted to rank highly. For that, she needed to pay close attention to everyone. She needed to. Catherine's thoughts came to an abrupt pause. She wasn't the only one. Many also paused, all turning in a certain direction. Thud, thud, thud. A loud thumping echoed far off in the distance, growing louder and heavier with each passing second as it drew nearer to them. Catherine heaved a deep breath as she looked at everyone around her. Careful. Her voice echoed through the quiet space, her mind calming as she had long since taken situations like this into account. Be very careful, something is coming our way. Do not panic and raise your weapons, meet it head on. Chapter 482, The Butcher Ate. Thud, thud, thud. Heavy silence fell over the surroundings. All eyes remained locked towards the sound as it grew closer and closer. There was no panic in the room. Everyone remained focused, alert, and ready to respond to anything outside of their expectations. Not yet, remain calm, not yet. Despite the current situation, Catherine remained smiling. Her eyes were narrow and her tone was serious, but despite it all, the smile never faded. It was perhaps such a smile that brought a sense of calm to the group as they all waited patiently for whatever was coming. Thud, thud, thud. It was extremely close now. Everyone also started to feel it, the ground shaking as the presence was now upon them. And soon, brace, bang. The wall in the distance shattered, dust erupting upward as one of the group members thrust their hands forward, forming an enormous shield around them to block the flying debris. Even so, a cloud of dust still managed to slip through, rising around them and blurring their vision for a moment. Careful, I sense multiple coming fast. A shout followed a moment later, Marcus pointing towards several points within the smoke as several red dots appeared in his vision. Standing next to him, Elias took a step forward and brought his hand forward, pieces of a gun materializing from thin air as they quickly assembled into one he shot the moment it formed. Bang, bang, bang. Despite the dust, his shots were pinpoint accurate. The sound of flesh being torn and blood sputtering echoed throughout, and yet. Thud, thud. Whatever was headed their way didn't slow down. In fact, it only picked up its speed as Andreas had no choice but to step forward, smacking his gauntlets together as he let out a low grunt before rushing towards the dust. Bang! His body soon drove into the intruder as he grunted. Subsequently, his body glowed a bright yellow hue as his muscles expanded alongside his frame. His strength exploded, and whatever was trying to pass was quickly stopped. That was also the moment when everyone managed to catch sight of what was charging a team. A pig. A pig, wait, is that the masked butcher? What? For the first time, Catherine's smile wavered as she looked at the creature Andreas held back. A masked butcher? Isn't that an anomaly that is supposed to come way later? How come it's here? It's supposed to appear way later into the gate. And how come it's rushing towards us? They aren't supposed to leave their rooms. But as if that wasn't enough. Bang, bang. Look. Hold it, there's more coming. Hold it, wait, isn't this a masked butcher? What the fuck? Wait, what? More appeared and chaos erupted. Even Catherine was shocked to see more appear, their masks a different animal as they rushed their group with all their might. This doesn't really make sense. While they're indeed strong, they're usually bound to the deeper areas. For them to appear now, it's obvious that something has gone wrong with the gate. Catherine's shock merely lasted a few seconds. Beyond the shock was a calm analysis of the current situation. The studies and descriptions have said that the busked butchers never seem to leave their own place. The only way they do that is if they're chasing someone. Could they be chasing someone? Lifting her head, Catherine gave them a good look, but as she did, her brows knit together tightly. Although she couldn't read their thoughts because of their weird heads, she could read their body language. It was there that she noticed something peculiar. They're not actually attacking anyone. In fact, it seems more like they're just trying to get past us. The realization hit her quickly as her smile thinned even further. But why were they trying to get past them? Was there something beyond them? What was the reason for their actions? It looks like I'll have to step in this time. Closing her eyes, chattering connected her mind to her nodes. A series of lattices formed across her vision as she connected each path to another, several nodes connecting at once, and as she soon opened her eyes, her emerald green eyes flickered as her body began to split. There was a certain reason why Catherine was regarded as the ace of the branch guild, and not only that, the guild. It was because of her decree, one that only a small margin of the population had. The mimic decree. Spurt. One after another, figures resembling her began to split away from her main body as even more masked butchers started to appear. For now, the group appeared to be doing fine, but she could tell that the number of butchers was still growing. Not from any special skills, but from the vibration on the ground. Spurt. As another clone formed, she mumbled a direct order. Go. Her clones didn't waste a second. They dashed toward the anomalies, their movements sharp and nimble as they zigzagged past the others. One reached an anomaly first, leaping up and planting both hands on its shoulders, using the momentum to vault herself onto it. In the same motion, she twisted its head with one clean, brutal motion. Crack. The neck snapped back, but the anomaly remained standing. In fact, it didn't seem like it even noticed the fact that its head was twisted, as it raised its weapon and slashed away. The clone remained on top of it, taking out a dagger and stabbing it towards its neck. Spurred. But even that wasn't enough to make it stop. A similar situation appeared to be occurring with the other clones and group members. While some of the anomalies were taken down, the number coming down was even greater than the number taken down. Catherine stared at all of this with a frown as she created even more clones, trying her best to aid the group, but it was becoming extremely apparent that she couldn't create clones fast enough. For a second, she even thought about telling the others to stop and let the anomalies pass, but she was quick to discard such a thought. It was already too late for that. There were too many of them. Each one of them was rushing toward them, their speed and momentum increasing as they began to overwhelm the group. KH. I can't hold on much longer. Eck. Seeing the situation turn for the worse, Catherine took a deep breath and closed her eyes. This might hurt. In the end, after signaling the others with a few quick gestures, her fifth node began to churn, and her clones froze in place. A moment later, their bodies started to swell, forcing the group to rush back while covering for one another. Hurry back. She's doing it. Cast a shield. I'm doing it. All sorts of defensive measures snapped into place at once as the group covered for each other. And just as they finally managed to raise enough protection, one of the clones exploded. Bang! A heavy explosion thundered across the surroundings, making the shield shudder under the force. But that wasn't all. Bang, bang! Even more explosions resounded, each one more extreme than the other, causing the barrier to shake even further. Standing within the barrier, Catherine's face paled considerably as a sharp pain invaded her mind. "Are you okay? Do you?" "No, it's fine." The others moved in to support her, but she refused, even as more of her clones exploded. With each detonation, her face grew paler and her legs trembled, yet she stayed on her feet, refusing to let herself fall. This wasn't about pride. It was about being a leader. A leader couldn't show weakness in dire situations. It was also for this reason that she decided to opt for this option despite the pain. And soon, with the last clone exploding, a heavy silence fell over the surroundings. As the dust finally cleared, it revealed scattered limbs and blood. It was pure carnage, bones strewn across the ground, leaving everyone staring at the sight with cold breaths. But just when they thought it was over, squelch, squelch, a peculiar sound echoed, startling the faces of many. Squelch. Immediately, all heads turned toward the noise and spotted one of the anomalies. Its body was almost completely gone, and it was using its arms to drag itself across the ground, a long path of red following its movements. What? It's still moving. That actually looks quite pitiful. What is it trying to do? Yeah, I've been wondering. They weren't really trying to kill us, no. I'm not the only one who felt that, right? I thought the same. Me too. While the group was still marked by confusion, Chatterin's gaze remained fixed on the anomaly as it crawled further and further away from them. She stared at it, desperately trying to drag itself away from them, almost as if in fear. Fear? Her eyes blinked slowly as several images flashed back in her mind. Bah thump, bah thump. With her smile fading, Catherine slowly turned her head toward the distance, toward the hole in the wall. There didn't appear to be anything beyond the wall, but as she stared at it, Catherine began to feel something that made her heart freeze. Her mouth soon grew dry, and she stopped blinking altogether, her gaze locked tightly on the ruined wall. She stood like that for the next couple of seconds, even causing some of her team members to look at her weirdly. But soon she heard it. Step. The sound of a step. One that was steadily making its way towards them. And at the same time, she also caught a glimpse of it. Of the blood-stained figure standing behind the walls, blood dripping from its knife, as its presence swallowed the surroundings. Of the Butcher. Chapter 483, Bloodthirst 1. Moments prior, I previously assumed that it wouldn't be long until I found the boss. That the new types of anomalies were the next step for me to meet it, but spurred. Still nothing. I stood in silence while staring at the decapitated head on the floor. My thoughts were empty. Gripping onto the handle of the knife, I just had one thought. I need to kill the boss. No, it wasn't just the boss. I wanted to get rid of everything that stood in my way of the boss. Spurred. Thus, moving from room to room, I started going on a killing spree. The anomalies that I encountered became stronger with each room that I passed, but so did I, or to be precise, the knife. Although temporary, each anomaly I killed with the knife caused its power to rise, sharpening something deep within it for a short while. Each slash became smoother, anomalies falling under a simple slash of mine. My stamina also started to replenish. With the anomalies becoming easier for me to kill, the strain that my body took was a lot lower. But at the same time, the sense of bloodthirst increased. The world before me deepened into an even darker shade of crimson as I scanned my surroundings. I still had no clear sense of where the boss was hiding, but I could feel myself drawing steadily closer to him. He wasn't far off. Clank. Moving towards the next room, the situation was no different. Chains dangled from all directions as the familiar anomalies appeared. But this time, the moment I stepped into the room, something appeared different. The anomalies all stopped whatever they were doing, turning their attention towards me as they visibly froze on the spot. My entire arm tingled at the sight of them, and several dots appeared all over their bodies. I could feel the urge to kill surge even further as I took another step forward. But this time, the anomalies didn't engage. Instead, they all turned away and headed away. It wasn't a sight that I was unfamiliar with. This wasn't the first time I'd seen it, but it usually happened after I'd killed a few anomalies. At first, I thought it was some kind of trap. However, after observing it for a while, I realized that wasn't the case. Instead of killing them instantly, I simply watched the anomalies in silence as they moved toward the next room. Why is this happening? If this wasn't a trap then, taking a moment to look at the knife in my hand, I tightened my grip on the handle. As opposed to how the knife was in the past, it looked a lot different. It still looked like an inconspicuous knife, but something about it felt different. The blade was longer and sharper, with blood dripping from the side of it. Staring at the knife and then my reflection, I finally noticed something. My eyes. They were pitch black. It wasn't like this before. The entire white area was covered in black, while the pupils were entirely red. It was a change that caught me off guard, but also made me understand. All that killing is seeping deep into my mind. I see. Perhaps the reason why all the anomalies are running away is because of the changes that the knife is making to me. I grew hesitant. Thinking back to what had occurred to me as a result of my fractured node, I didn't want to repeat the same mistake as in the past. I didn't want to let the madness consume me, but at the same time, I also understood that this was a form of power. If I could just control it. Can I even control it? Staring at the body of the knife, I focused my attention on my reflection. This knife, it had changed so much that it almost felt like an entirely different item. The rate of absorption was limited, yet it still grew temporarily stronger with every drop of blood it consumed, passing that strength on to me. The changes never lasted long, but they were undeniably real. However, there was a catch. The more the knife devoured beyond its usual limits, the more it pressed against my thoughts. If I wanted to harness that power, I couldn't afford to let it seize control of my mind. Kill the boss, find him. Kill him. Its effects were already showing. Closing my eyes, I took a deep breath. Should I just call it a day with the knife and stop using it? I can always handle this with the Realm Walkers and the others. Knife or not, I was confident in completing this scenario. But, in the off chance that someone does end up showing up, I can't afford to have my anomalies show up. Given the events that occurred back in Malavia, I'm sure any human that I might end up meeting in a scenario might recognize them. Wouldn't it be better to test the utmost limits of this new power for the future? I didn't dwell on the matter for too long. Perhaps because my mind had already tasted the power and I was already in too deep, I decided to proceed ahead with the knife. I planned on testing the item to the limit. To make use of it in the future, I needed to use it longer so I could get a sense of when to stop and how far I could push it. Yes, this is all for the future. And it was with such thoughts that I headed to the next door. Clank. This time I acted differently from before. Instead of walking slowly past each room, I started to run. Knowing that there was a very good chance that the anomalies would simply run away from me due to the knife, I simply decided not to give them the time to run. I decided to go on a killing spree. To grow the knife further. Come here. Spurred. Blood splattered all over my mask and clothes as I slashed everything within my sight. At some point, my vision started to narrow. I could no longer see and take note of what was around me. My breathing grew heavier, and my focus sharpened. More dots began appearing across the anomalies, and I could feel my body moving even faster than it had just moments before. It was a strange sensation. One that felt incredibly addictive. Where are you running to? Spurred. With one clean slash, 2 anomalies fell. Kill, I need to kill them. I didn't look back, dashing ahead. I could feel the location of every anomaly within the vicinity, with the scope expanding further and further with each kill. This was when I realized that I could very likely find the boss the more blood that I absorbed, and without wasting a single moment, I charged ahead with even more momentum. Spurred. I lost myself in this euphoria, killing every anomaly that was in my path. By then I had long since lost track of how much time had passed. My vision grew increasingly narrow, and at some point I started seeing fewer and fewer anomalies. But I could feel them. I could see that they were moving away from me. And soon, my steps started to slow down as I stared at the gaping hole in the wall. Drip, drip. Walking ahead in silence, I barely took notice of the people within the room as I looked around. My lips eventually curled beneath the mask. Found you. Chapter 484, Bloodthirst 2. Tag. At the sound of its step, the air in the room, which had been growing hot, suddenly turned cold. Catherine and the others had the sudden urge to reach for their necks. Akioka. What in the world is that? Drip, drip. A wet, dripping sound followed a moment later, and the figure stepped out of the shadows, its face gradually coming into view. The instant it appeared, an intense, suffocating pressure swept over everyone present, forcing their breathing to grow even heavier. Especially when they caught sight of its appearance. What the hell is that? Another butcher? Is this the boss, but why does he seem so different? Wearing the head of a pig, it resembled the other anomalies at a glance, yet something about it was unmistakably different. Everyone felt it immediately, their breaths coming to a stop as a cold wind drifted through the room, making the crimson apron at its front flutter softly while it took another step forward. Chatterine stared at the anomaly in silence, her eyes as narrow as they could be. My heart is beating so quickly, even though I don't want it to. As an elite, Catherine was trained to keep her composure and heartbeat in check. And yet, it's been quite some time since I felt so uneasy from an anomaly. Having not participated in the Malavia Gate, for Catherine, the anomaly in front of her was one of the first to truly send chills down her spine, especially when she took notice of the knife within its grasp as it slowly dripped blood onto the floor. Something about the knife felt off. No, not just the knife. Its eyes. Yes, those horrifying, piercing red eyes, coated in a pitch-black darkness that seemed to absorb all light around. Staring into those eyes, Chatterine found herself falling into a daze. But not for long. Captain, a hesitant yet firm voice called out for her. Blinking once, Catherine shifted her attention toward Marcus and the others, finally noticing the way they were all staring at her, waiting for her orders. Fuck. It was the sight of everyone's gazes that snapped Catherine out of her daze. Without hesitation, she began issuing orders. It's clear that the gate has changed. I can't tell if its rank has increased, but judging from the fact that an outlier like this has appeared, it must mean that something has changed, especially since I don't recall the boss being like this. Her thoughts were firm, and so were her orders. The best thing we can do is keep the anomaly in check while calling for backup. Elias, use the flip phone and get in touch with the guild. Understood. Marcus, Andreas, the two of you help me out. As for the others, get out of this room and look for the boss. I can't say for certain the boss hasn't changed, but in the off chance it's still the same, I know you'll be able to handle it. If we clear the gate fast, we might be able to survive this. I'm counting on all of you. Taking a deep breath, 3 of Catherine's nodes churned at once. She no longer held back as her body started to split into different copies of her. Each copy was exactly the same as hers, be it power and thoughts. But she could also quickly change that. Intermediate node, independence. The eyes of the numerous clones flickered at once. That was also the moment when the numerous clones charged the distant anomaly. Haya. Seeing them move, Catherine's chest heaved heavily as her face turned pale. Not only was she still creating clones of herself, but this node also consumed a lot of her stamina. But it had to be done. If she didn't do this, she'd be forced to take control of several dozen clones at once and somehow keep them organized. Considering she also had to defend her real body while tracking the position and direction of every other clone, it would overwhelm her mind almost instantly. This wasn't all. It was merely just the beginning as the clones started to circle the anomaly, and the others also got into position. Ready? Catherine glanced at everyone, her face turning paler. Despite this, her nodes continued to churn, and changes began to affect the clones she sent out as her knees started to wobble. Still gritting her teeth, Catherine forced herself to remain standing as she used her most powerful node. Catherine could feel it with all her guts. If she didn't use this, they would be as good as dead. Advanced node, replica. Ayukura. A sweet sensation rose up from Catherine's throat as her legs wobbled once more. This time, she found herself unable to keep herself upright as her knee buckled onto the hard ground and blood leaked out from her mouth. The expressions of many in the group changed, but only for a moment. Looking at her expression, nobody dared to tell her to stop. They could all see the fire in her gaze, and they all understood that there was no stopping her. Instead, they all focused their attention on the anomaly in front of them. Holding onto that knife, it stood in silence, its crimson gaze quietly scanning the room. In a way, it almost felt as though it wasn't looking at them. As if it held no regard for them. But such neglect didn't last for long, especially after the changes that occurred to the clones set up by Catherine. Krog crack, krog crack. Loud cracking sounds began to echo across the surroundings, the clones twisting and churning in all sorts of ways as their forms warped with each movement, their faces shifting away from Catherine's features and reshaping into entirely different ones. In just a matter of seconds, all the clones began to resemble one of the people in her group. This all happened incredibly fast, with the anomaly staring at it all in silence. It didn't seem to want to attack immediately. As for the others, they were all keenly aware of Catherine's ability, hence why they showed no reaction. Instead, they all faced the anomaly with the same serious expression. Hayod's Hayo. Seeing the situation, Catherine caught her breath as Elias helped her up. Grabbing onto his shoulder, she clenched her teeth tightly while staring at the anomaly. It wasn't doing anything at the moment, but the pressure coming out of it was suffocating. We need to take the initiative. And thus, go. Her words started a chain reaction. Be it the clones or the members of her team, the moment the words left her mouth, they all surged toward the anomaly at once. They attacked from all directions, a series of different nodes churning at once. And yet, the anomaly didn't move. It didn't even spare them a glance. And just when the attacks were about to land on it, a black film covered its entire body from beneath. Shortly after that, he disappeared. Be it Catherine or the other members of her team, they all froze at once, confused by the sudden turn of events. That confusion lasted only a moment until everyone felt it. Their heads slowly turned, expressions shifting sharply as a shadow stretched across the floor, forming right behind Catherine. Catherine opened her mouth, but no words left her mouth. After all that work, after all that preparation, bang. Chapter 485, Bloodthirst 3. Bang. A terrifying explosion ripped through the air. The surroundings shook, along with the chains that dangled above, as they swayed wildly in all directions. But nobody paid attention to what was happening around. In that instant, all eyes fell on the anomaly as hearts stopped at once. In particular, Catherine S. A heavy silence fell as dust rose up in the air. Nobody knew what had happened, but in that instant, some felt it more than others. Death. For just a fleeting moment, Catherine felt death stare at her right in the face, her face completely white as she stood completely still, her body frozen from the shock as the clones around her started to fade one by one. Her forehead was now completely soaked in sweat, with her emerald green eyes rattling wildly as she slowly turned her head to see the dust settle, exposing the butcher as it stood before a broken-down area of the room. It stood in silence, not saying a single word. And yet, she and the others felt it clearly. The twisted and blood-curdling sense of joy within its gaze. Almost as if it had found its favorite toy to play with. Be it Catherine or the others in the room, they all felt it at once. The hair on the backs of their hands stood on end, their skin prickling as their breathing stalled. The pressure bearing down on the room grew even more suffocating, forcing some to clutch their throats as they stumbled back. That's. How are we supposed to defeat that? A heavy sense of crisis fell over the room. Feeling such a suffocating pressure coming from a single anomaly, they all started to despair. How could they defeat this? It was impossible. Run. They needed to run. Shit. Staring at her team, Catherine could sense that the minds of everyone present had been tainted by the anomaly before them. Its overwhelming bloodlust seeped into their thoughts, planting deep seeds of fear that took root almost instantly. Even she could feel that same fear beginning to crawl through her own mind. Thankfully, she was just able to hold on to enough clarity to notice something. Hold on. Extending her hand to hold the others back, Catherine swallowed nervously while staring at the anomaly. With most of her clones cancelled, she was no longer as tired and worn out as before. Of course, she was still far from being in optimal condition, but at the very least, she was faring better than before. Better than those moments when she could barely even bring herself to breathe. See, Captain. Feeling the doubts coming from her group, Catherine swallowed nervously while continuing to stare at the anomaly. The more she looked at it, the greater the sense of despair that she felt, her heart racing faster than ever before as she swallowed her saliva before eventually speaking. I don't think it's here for us. Her words made several pause. Wasn't here for them. A few sharper ones immediately understood, as they thought back to the interaction from before. Thinking about it, the anomaly has never looked at us once. And now that you mention it, you're right. Wait. All heads turned toward Catherine once more as she pressed her lips together, her gaze fixed on the pig-headed butcher's side profile. Eventually, as if it could feel her eyes on it, the butcher slowly turned its head, her emerald eyes locking with its sharp, crimson ones. Time appeared to freeze for her in that moment, the very air getting stripped away from her lungs as those two crimson-red eyes remained fixed on her. In that very moment, Catherine felt what could only be described as a profound, sinking dread. But above all, she sensed it with absolute clarity, the smile lurking behind those eyes. A deep and depraved smile that hid nothing but the sense of ecstasy the butcher felt in that very moment as its head slowly turned, and it walked past the broken wall, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. And then, crunch, Catherine's teeth clenched tightly, so tightly that it almost felt as though they would crack under the pressure. Fuck. Space. I'm getting closer, I can sense it, I can. Feel it better. Yes, I'm almost here. Where are you? Where are you hiding? I've been looking for you for quite some time. My vision was narrow. So narrow that I could hardly keep track of what was happening around me. All I could see was what was ahead of me. Or to be more precise, the dot that was ahead of me, the one I was certain was the boss. I was drawing closer and closer to it, and with every step I took, the knife in my hand trembled more violently, flooding me with a disturbing, almost intoxicating sense of pleasure. Yes. I knew that things were starting to become dangerous. There was a very real possibility that I could lose my sanity, yet I still wanted to push forward. The danger was undeniable, but if I intended to keep moving ahead, I had to follow this path before everything slipped beyond the point of no return. Thankfully, I had arrived at my destination. As my steps slowly started to come to a stop, a distant chopping sound echoed across the surroundings as the dot in my vision started to grow larger and larger. Eventually, it was all I could see as the crimson within my vision faded, and a large room appeared before me. Tack, tack, tack. The sound grew louder with each step I took, syncing disturbingly well with the rhythm of my heartbeat. As the last traces of crimson bled away from my vision, shapes formed, dark, hanging shapes that dangled from the ceiling like some sort of ornaments. The air was thick, as if something wet clung to it. I took another step. Squelch. The floor yielded beneath my boot. My steps finally paused as I looked towards the room. It was long, dim, and bathed in a sickly yellow light that flickered every few seconds, as though they were on the verge of breaking. Rusted metal tables lined the walls, their surfaces scratched and stained in ways that reminded me of the crimson that coated my apron. Chains hung from above, each one ending in a hook dripping with something dark and sluggish. And at the far end of the room, tack, 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 the source of the sound. A massive silhouette stood hunched over a blood-soaked slab. Its broad back rose and fell with each slow breath. Something squelched wetly under its blade as it chopped again, and again, and again. Each strike sent droplets flying, splattering faintly against the nearby wall. My hand trembled faintly. Not out of fear, but something else. Tack. The cold took over the room. For a moment I almost thought it hadn't noticed me. The figure remained focused entirely on whatever lay beneath its blade, carving, slicing, cutting with a twisted sort of rhythm, methodical, patient, almost tender. Then, it stopped. Putting the knife down, the anomaly slowly reached for the white towel next to it, and began to clean its head as it slowly turned its head to face my direction. As it did, it paused. Our gazes met, and its lips parted. Yours here. I smiled then. Hello. Chapter 486, Bloodthirst 4. The anomaly's presence felt different from any of the others I had encountered. Its face was hidden behind a plain white mask, smeared with streaks of dried and fresh blood that clung to it like crude, uneven markings. Through the narrow openings of that mask, a pair of piercing dark eyes stared straight at me. I found it both amusing and odd. Staring at the anomaly in front of me, and seeing its calm expression, almost as if it was expecting me, I realized rather quickly that it had long been aware of my presence. Perhaps it had been waiting for me to arrive the entire time. But that didn't matter. Holding onto the knife, my lips parted slowly. Weren't you looking for me? The anomaly stood in silence, not saying a single thing. All of a sudden, it had turned into a mute. I found it hard to contain my smile as I looked at it. The urge to kill the anomaly was stronger than ever, the voices in my mind growing stronger with each passing second. Still, I just barely held myself back. No words, that's disappointing. I opened my mouth again, the words about to leave my mouth, but... Nah, fuck that. The bloodlust took complete hold of me. Normally, I would have waited a little bit and hoped to gain some information from the anomaly, and this was what I had initially planned to do, but it all went out the window a second later. Right, I can just use my node to figure it out. I'll just cut it up a little, it doesn't matter if it can't speak. Knife in hand, several dots appeared on the anomaly's body. Swoosh. I swung my knife towards its left shoulder. The blade met its shoulder, or at least it should have. Instead, the moment steel touched cloth, the anomaly's shape bent in a way that shouldn't have been possible, like its bones were made of wet rope. My knife sliced only empty air. My grin stretched wider. Oh, you're one of those. The anomaly's head twitched once. Then again. Its body began to lose its shape, the edges melting like wax under a flame before the entire figure collapsed into a wet splash, spreading across the floor as a thick pool of blood. A moment later, it reformed several steps away. Its eyes never blinked behind those mask slits, just watching. I hated the way it stared. Because it wasn't afraid. It should have been afraid. Why is it not afraid? Why? I stopped myself mid-thought. Bringing my hand to my mask, I realized something pretty quickly. My arm. It was trembling. H-ha. With a shaky breath, the smile on my face dimmed. I'm starting to really lose it here. The knife's influence had grown even stronger. Perhaps if I pushed a little bit more, the influence would turn me completely. I was threading a very dangerous territory. I needed to get things over quickly. I was close to the limit now. Well, all right. Taking a deep breath, I extended my hand. A dark figure appeared a moment later, almost like how the butcher disappeared, as a dark hand reached for the knife in my hand. I guess I should stop. The anomaly moved at the same time. Seemingly realizing what was happening and preparing to strike, I felt a powerful surge of pressure from its body. The weight of it hit me instantly, leaving no doubt in my mind. If it came at me like that, defeating it would be nearly impossible, especially without a knife in my hand. But this had to be done. Otherwise, I would really lose track of myself. Kidding. Just as the Realmwalker's hand was about to close around the knife, I activated trait transfer, forcing a surge of borrowed power through my body and amplifying my strength severalfold before twisting my torso and throwing the knife with every bit of power that I could muster. SWOSH. The knife shot forward like a bullet. It tore through the air with a sharp, cutting whistle, ignoring everything in its path as it closed the distance to the anomaly in an instant. And yet, as if it had anticipated that impossible speed, the anomaly's body began to melt before my eyes, its form dissolving into liquid seconds before the blade could strike. Or at least it attempted to. A soft giggle escaped my lips, and the anomaly stopped melting. There was nothing it could do from there. Thud. The knife drove straight into the center of its forehead, sinking in with a dull, wet sound. The white mask split down the middle, cracks spiderwebbing outward as its eyes widened beneath the fragments. The smile returned to my face as its body froze on the spot. Not yet. It was a good strike, but I had failed to strike it in the perfect spot. It was just a hair's breadth away from the real spot that I needed it. But this was fine. Without further ado, I moved closer to the anomaly. I didn't delay time. With the knife no longer in my hands, I could feel my strength slipping rather quickly. I had to end this quickly. And so I did. Stopping before the anomaly, I stared at the knife embedded in its forehead and reached for it. But just as I was about to do so, a hand clasped my own as I turned to see a certain stitched-up face looking at me. I wouldn't do that if I were you. How so? I asked smilingly. For some reason, the conductor didn't seem very threatening to me. In fact, I started to wonder. Can I cut the conductor as well? Was I strong enough to do that now? I want to cut him. The conductor didn't answer. Instead, as if noticing my smile beneath the mask, it too started to smile as the stitches on its mouth came undone. I never once imagined you'd be able to surpass yourself the way you did back in the gate. Even now, I still get shivers just thinking about the power you displayed back then. But this time... The conductor's smile faded slightly, as its gaze shifted to the knife lodged deep in the anomaly's skull. This time, even I'm starting to get goosebumps at the thought of what you'll become once that knife completely takes over your mind. Like an addiction, it'll eat away at you, little by little, until you turn into something that the world won't be able to contain. Standing in silence, I didn't respond to the conductor. I simply stared at its stitched-up eyes, watching every tiny shift in its expression with careful focus. In the end, I brushed its hand off and grabbed the knife. The conductor vanished a moment later, its presence dissolving into the silence around me. In the heavy silence that followed, I stepped forward without a word. Then, gripping the handle of the knife tightly, I began to drive the knife into the anomaly's body. Spurred. Not once. Not twice, not even thrice. I did it for as long as I was satisfied. Spurred. Apron, shoes, and pants. Blood spurted in all directions as I continued to stab at the anomaly. As I continued stabbing, the conductor's words echoed relentlessly through my mind, threading themselves between each harsh breath I took. And then, just as the blade sank into the anomaly one more time, I stopped. Hey, clank, clank. The knife dropped onto the ground, clanking on the hard concrete floor as I slowly raised my head to look up. The world won't contain. Pursing my lips, I moved my hands a little. I wonder if it'll ever get to that point. Chapter 487, Shadowed Figure 1. The next step was simple. Reaching my hand forward, I activated my node. Intermediate node, anamnesis. KRRR. Something about the memory felt odd. Bits and pieces of fragmented memories surfaced, flashing images that had once belonged to the anomaly. None of them was complete. They appeared only for an instant before dissolving away, drowned out by a loud, grating static. This persisted until the surroundings shifted. Or at least partly. Aside from the blood staining the ground and the shattered wall behind it, nothing had really changed at all. Everything just appeared to return to how it had been before my arrival. Tag. Even the chopping sound remained the same. The anomaly returned to the table, resuming its work as if nothing had happened. Its massive cleaver rose and fell in a brutal rhythm, crashing down onto the numerous carcasses laid out before it, splitting flesh and cutting cleanly through bone with terrifying force. This persisted for the next several seconds, until the anomaly eventually stopped. Almost as if it sensed something, it turned around. That was when it saw it. A shadow. Standing in the corner of the room, its presence was swallowed by a towering shadow as the chains above creaked and swayed. Most of its form remained hidden, erased by the darkness clinging to the walls, yet a few things couldn't be concealed. The smile clinging to its face as it stared at the anomaly, paired with the uniform worn only by the Severed Stars Guild. It stood within the darkness, observing the anomaly. No, it was staring somewhere else. Something else. KRRR. The static returned. I know you'll see this eventually. That was also the moment the shadow spoke, its voice cracking. Despite this, its voice was still easy to understand. I hope you enjoy my gift. It should entertain you for a bit. Its gaze appeared drawn towards the anomaly. You stood out too much now, we see you. KRRR. The static grew even stronger, making it even harder to determine its words. But despite this, just before it all ended, its last words rang out. You are not from this world. You are. The memory ended, and I took a deep breath, my head rolling back towards the ceiling as I clung to the head of the anomaly with all the force that I could muster. Thousands of different thoughts and questions flooded my mind as I stared blankly at the ceiling above, completely forgetting where I was. Everything soon became clear to me. So that's the case. This entire situation had been fabricated from the start. The anomaly had targeted me due to the man wearing the Severed Stars Guild uniform. It did all of this in order to send me a message, and given its words, it was very obvious that it knew a lot about me. Not just about the fact that I wasn't from this world, but the way that it knew that I could see the memories of anomalies. What was happening? Who was the shadowed figure? How did it know so much about me? Was it related to the demons? I had countless questions swirling through my mind, but this wasn't the time to linger on them, especially not when I heard the faint sound of something rolling onto the ground as I slowly turned my head. A pair of emerald green eyes met mine. She stood in silence, her expression twisted as she looked at me and the anomaly. This was also the moment I finally took notice of my current position. Bloodied from head to toe, I stood there holding the head of the dungeon's boss, its body carved apart beyond recognition. Yes, I certainly looked very friendly. Even so, with my goal finally accomplished, I activated my second node and tightened my grip around the boss's head, crushing it with all the strength I could muster. Bang! Once more, blood exploded in all directions. The emerald eyes twisted further at the sight as she finally reacted, her body blurring towards me with such craze that it took me aback. Was she always like this? Unfortunately, it was already too late. I felt my body begin to drift away, my form growing lighter with each passing second. As I faded completely, I could just make out the faint outline of Catherine's body as she desperately tried to reach the spot where I had been. How persistent? No, there was more to it. I'll fucking kill you. Crazy? Yes, she was crazy. Especially those eyes of hers. Get the fuck back. Swoosh. A crazy bitch. Space. No, damn it, fuck. A curse rang out as Catherine's hand sliced through empty space. Fuck, damn it, fuck. More curses spilled from her lips as she turned back, staring at the void where he had been only moments before snapping her head around in search of any trace of the anomaly. Her once bubbly personality had long since vanished, replaced by a cold mix of hatred and disgust. She continued to scan the surroundings, searching desperately for any sign of the anomaly, but no matter how hard she looked, it was gone. Damn it. Her thoughts drifted to the moments when she first saw the anomaly. From the disregard to the sight that greeted her after she chased after it. Those cold, glaring red eyes stared ahead as they clutched the torn, mutilated body of what was supposed to be the gate's boss. And most importantly, that subtle shudder that she felt under its immense gaze. Damn it. Chattering bit onto her lips, her face paling as she covered her face with both hands. I wasn't scared, I just was surprised. I was caught off guard by the suddenness of the situation. Yes, that's what it is, it has to be that. I wasn't scared of shit. Despite telling herself this, Catherine didn't really believe her own words. Deep down, she was acutely aware of the truth. Of the fact that, for just a brief moment, she felt fear. And it was that realization that made a long-buried emotion surge to the surface as she bit down on her lip. Hard enough for blood to well and spill, her eyes turning bloodshot as her breath grew uneven. I'm not the same as her, she muttered, her voice trembling with restrained fury. I'm not fucking useless. I can do better, I'll do better. I'm not useless like that piece of shit that can't even beat a couple of titans. I'm not useless. Tick. Bringing Catherine to an abrupt stop was the sound of something falling. She slowly turned her head in the direction of the noise, not bothering to hide her expression. It was there that she saw several figures enter. Captain. See, Captain. From their breathing, it was clear they had rushed to her. Captain, I get that you're trying to get the anomaly, but this is too much. That thing. It wasn't something that we could defeat. I've also contacted the guild, and they should be arriving soon. What if something happened to you? This. Abruptly, the voice stopped. Finally taking in the chaos around them, their voices fell silent as their eyes widened. One by one, their gazes settled on the mangled heap on the floor, and if not for the shattered mask, none of them would have known what it once was. Seeing their reaction, Catherine opened her mouth, but soon closed it. Eventually, her lips pulled into a soft and bubbly smile as she opened them again. Get the fuck out of my sight for now. Just the mere sight of everyone pisses me off. Everyone flinched, not because of her attitude. They had long been aware of her real self. But it was more because they could see it clearly. The crazy bitch of the Branch Guild was about to explode. Chapter 488, Shadowed Figure 2. A group composed of several individuals waited inside a tall chamber, rows of large monitors humming softly as thick tubes connected them to a swirling portal suspended at the center of the room. Besides the soft hum of the computers, the room was otherwise silent. How is the situation? Any information? Breaking the silence, one man spoke up. Wearing gold-rimmed glasses, he was the section chief of the hoarding department, Clement White. Despite being greenlit by the BUA to dive into gates once again, the events in Malavia still haunted the minds of many present. Section Chief, we're waiting for more information. I'm trying to get a visual on the situation, but we can't see anything. The only good thing is that we can still measure their vitals. There's been no deaths yet. We might be able to make it in time. And how long do you think that is? I am not sure. The technical agent replied as he twinkled with the device that connected to the gate. Feeling the Section Chief's burdensome gaze, he could only quietly swallow his words before getting to work. The Section Chief crossed his arms, his foot tapping against the floor. I need you to hurry. The World Congress is just around the corner. We can't afford to lose our recruits, especially not this batch. This batch will be the one that will place us in a good ranking. They're the ones that I spent so much time developing. They're even better than any team from the main guild. If we lose them, then we'll. WHIRL. A loud whirling sound cut the Section Chief short as the gate suddenly began to fluctuate. His expression, along with those of the others present, changed as they all turned toward the technical agent, who stared at the gate with a flustered look. Wait, what? This doesn't make sense. Why is the gate fluctuating? Is the gate imploding? No, that isn't the case. The numbers don't suggest that. Then, hastily scanning the digits appearing on the computer beside him, his expression slowly shifted into something strange. What's wrong? What's with that expression? The Section Chief pressed the agent, who didn't answer but instead looked at the gate. That was when a change occurred. Several shadows appeared a moment later, their outlines growing clearer as the figures everyone had been anxiously waiting for finally emerged from the gate. They're here. The room stirred. Everyone rushed the group at once, their minds filled with questions, but before any of them could voice them out, they stopped. Because they finally took notice of their expressions. Dull expressions hung on their faces, like those of someone who had just seen a ghost, as they stared blankly at their surroundings. The Section Chief raised his hand, stopping everyone from speaking as he looked at the group in front of him with clear worry. Eventually, however, he turned his attention towards the one who seemed the most clear-headed. Catherine. His voice was soft. Hey, Catherine. Approaching her, he nudged her shoulder, prompting her to look up to him, exposing her twisted expression. Oh fuck, not again. The Section Chief sucked in a breath as he eventually asked, What's going on? Can you tell me exactly what happened? Space. The room was exactly as I had left it. As I finally emerged, I looked toward the meat grinder just as it ground to a halt. Moving towards it, I grabbed it and placed it away. I think I'm going to turn vegetarian for a while. Just the thought of meat made me feel nauseated. Feeling a sense of exhaustion, I turned to look at the chair, and just as the thought of sitting down crossed my mind, I looked down at my clothing and shook my head. No, maybe I shouldn't. Thankfully, my clothes were an item. By simply pressing on them, I was able to change in an instant. I was now wearing a simple black shirt with jeans. Without further ado, I finally sat down on the chair and leaned back, allowing my eyes to finally close for some rest as my head began to twitch. Kill. Words echoed over and over inside my mind as the darkness swallowing my vision slowly deepened, shifting into a heavy, suffocating shade of red. What followed was an extreme sense of weakness as the effects of the knife started to finally wear off. I wasn't flustered by the sudden turn of events. I had long been aware of the consequences of my actions. Power didn't come free, and everything I had done was to test the limits of the power that I had been granted. 203. These were the number of anomalies that I had killed back in the gate. It was also the limit of the knife. Any more and it would be for the best if I don't exceed that number. Opening my eyes, I stared blankly at the ceiling. Countless red dots swam across my vision as heat began to seep through my body. Maybe I was starting to run a fever. No, I very likely have a fever. Thankfully, this appeared to be the extent of the consequences, at least for now, but there was something more pressing for me to think about. In other words, I fell for a trap. Was this all a test for me? I don't exactly know what their goals are, but they appear to be aware of my abilities. This is rather troublesome. But to make things even worse, the one responsible for all of this appears to be inside the guild. I pressed my lips together, feeling the skin on my arms prickle. Goosebumps, I'm getting goosebumps. Outside of that, however, it wasn't all bad. Taking into consideration its words, I more or less could tell that it wasn't aware of my new abilities. I hope you enjoy my gift. It should entertain you for a bit. It didn't. Perhaps without the knife, I would have struggled against the boss. But with it in hand, it took no time at all for me to deal with it. A C-ranked hoarding boss. But still, this isn't an ability that I can just use as I wish. A powerful urge to cut down everything in front of me lingered, added to the fever. I really had to pace myself when using this ability in the future. I could only imagine what the side effects might have been had I prolonged my exposure, or gone even further down the rabbit hole. Still, this wasn't all for nothing. I now had a clear understanding of the knife and its abilities. I also had an idea of my limits. If utilized properly, this could very well serve as a good weapon for me. But I'll need to be careful. I wonder when Kyle and the others will come here. Checking the time, I tried to push all thoughts aside. There was a lot I needed to think about, but I was in no state to do so. The knife's influence was still strong, and the more I thought about the situation, the greater my bloodlust became. Reaching for my pocket, I took out several crystals. They were the ones I had gained from clearing the gate. In total, there were about 7 of them, and they all looked rather pure. Not bad. Checking them to the side where they faded into the darkness, I looked at my phone. They should be here soon. I had already contacted my squad. They were supposed to arrive soon. Thinking about my squad, I suddenly started to miss them. It had been a while since I had last seen them. How were they doing? As far as I'm aware, they should be doing well. It isn't like they participated in the Malavia Gate incident. They had been a little bit too weak to participate. I should probably give them a call, remind them that I still exist. Thinking about how much I had neglected them, a bitter smile tugged at my lips. Just as I was about to make the call, a sudden knock stopped me mid-motion. Knock, knock. I didn't even have the time to look up when the door opened. Shortly after, a pair of green eyes met my sight. Excuse me. Her voice was soft, almost polite, but her actions told a different story. She entered as if the room were her own and took a seat in the chair opposite me. I'd like to talk with you for a moment. I could only stare at her in silence. Quietly placing my phone down on the desk, I could only offer her an insincere smile as I mumbled to myself. What is this crazy bitch doing here? Chapter 489, Vial 2032, The Butcher. There was no doubt about it in my mind. She was a crazy bitch. She had hidden it well when I first met her, but those eyes I saw in her final moments, despite being fixed on something that could only be described as an anomaly, were unmistakably insane. That was most likely her real self. Yes, she was a crazy bitch. I guess it was all a facade. I can already see her real personality leak before my very eyes. I'll make it quick. Despite her best attempts at hiding it, her face was haggard. I was asked to escort you to the guild master. It seems like he wants to talk to you. The guild master. My heart froze. Thinking about that man, I felt my stomach twist. Don't tell me he noticed something. Thinking about it, given how sharp the guild master was, I could see him suspecting me of being the butcher. Yes, he wants to see you. Even Catherine appeared surprised by the fact that the guild master wanted to see me, but she didn't appear to be too interested as she switched the topic. Besides that, there's been a little incident. There will be no gate diving for a while. What? I pretended to be surprised, but I thought the BUA had given the green light. They have. Then, this is an internal decision. You'll be filled in on the situation later. As if tired of speaking to me, she stood up and nudged the door with her chin. If possible, I'd like to get done with this quickly since I'm rather tired. Is that okay with you? Oh, yes. Considering her current situation, I didn't make things more difficult for her. I nodded and stood up, or at least I tried. Propping myself up with the armrest, I nearly stumbled back into my chair as a wave of dizziness and weakness washed over me. Catherine stopped, turning her attention towards me. I hastily clenched my teeth and forced myself upright, playing it off as though I was fine. You okay? I'm fine. I hit the leg of the chair. Hello? She hit it well, but her expression seemed to say, what an idiot. I ignored it and forced myself to act as naturally as I could. Even so, it became painfully clear that I was in a weakened state. My back was drenched in sweat, and every step felt heavier than it should have. Thankfully, Catherine seemed to be in a similar condition and didn't pay much attention to me. Otherwise, let's go. Catherine spoke up, her voice strained. Let's not make the guild master wait for long. How could I go and describe the guild master's office in the branch guild? It was certainly different from the one in the main guild. The ceiling was tall, the floor paved with gray marble, while dark pillars rose along the sides to support the structure. Large windows exposed the streets below, and even the desk was impressive, crafted from dark marble that matched the floor. Ah, it looks like you're here. The guild master greeted us with a light smile as he sat behind the marble desk, his clean dark suit neatly outlining his well-built frame. Standing beside the guild master was a figure I didn't recognize. Still, given his presence in the guild master's office, it was clear he held a high position within the guild. Most likely a section chief of sorts. Aim. I still pretended to be confused as I walked into the room. Looking around, I settled my gaze back toward the guild master. I heard a little bit from Catherine, but I'm not quite sure about the situation. What am I being called here for? It seemed I hadn't chosen the right words. The moment they left my mouth, the man I assumed to be a section chief frowned in displeasure. Thankfully, before he could say anything, the guild master spoke up. Your confusion is understandable. I'll explain the situation to you in a bit. For now, sit down. I subconsciously sat down. Not because I wanted to, but my body just moved on its own. It was always like this with the guild master. Ours was a cooperative relationship, yet the longer I stayed in his presence, the more suffocating it became. He looked friendly and easygoing, but there was something lurking in his gaze and the way he carried himself, something that made me feel as though I were being quietly swallowed whole. Before I knew it, my already drenched back was even more soaked. I'll get straight to the point. There's been an incident. The guild master's gaze was directed at me as he spoke. It only occurred recently, and the reason I'm bringing this up is that I don't believe this incident was a rare case caused by a Gates mutation. There's reason to believe it happened due to someone's interference. What? This time I didn't fake my surprise. I was genuinely surprised as I looked at the guild master. How did he know? How did he know that this incident occurred due to someone's influence? I won't get into the technicalities, but after analyzing the reports and the analyst's data, the section chief and I have reached an agreement. There's reasonable suspicion that the incident occurred due to someone's influence. A heavy silence hung across the room as neither Chatterine nor I spoke. But eventually, it was Catherine who shattered that silence. Is it because of the World Congress? There's reason to believe that's the case, yes. The guild master nodded, his expression calm. I alternated my gaze between the two, still finding the situation to be confusing. The two of you are the most promising recruits present in the guild at the moment. You two were probably the target. The section chief beside the guild master grew even darker in expression, so much so that it almost seemed as though storm clouds were gathering behind him. It looked like he had something to say, especially when he looked at me. He looked at me right. To some extent, you can say it's your good luck for not going into the gate today. Directing his attention back to me, I felt my back straighten subconsciously as I quietly nodded my head. I guess so. But why did it seem like there was another meaning to his words? We'll go into more detail about the situation later when we have more information, but I'm here to inform this to the two of you so that you're more careful in the future. Since you might be targeted, it's best to pay closer attention to your surroundings. Of course, the guild will try its best to keep you safe, but given the nature of the situation, there's reason to suspect there's a traitor within the guild. He's really sharp, isn't he? He was somehow able to deduce most of the situation. Of course, the sharper he was, the more his gaze stung. Feeling his gaze sweep over my one more time, I took a quiet breath. Relax, he doesn't know anything. Don't show anything. Aside from that, there are a few things that I'd like to mention. The conversation continued from there, with the guild master speaking for several more minutes, and he turned his attention towards the section chief and Catherine. I think I've said everything that I needed to say. If possible, I'd like for the two of you to give us some space. Catherine and the section chief exchanged glances before then looking at me. While I didn't feel anything from Catherine's gaze, the section chief's eyes appeared to tell me a lot of words as he stared at me in silence. But fortunately, or perhaps unfortunately, the two of them soon left the room, leaving only the guild master and me behind. The silence in the room felt suffocating as I tried to speak, and I felt the weight of the situation press down on my mind as I struggled to find my words. Thankfully, the guild master's lips opened a moment later. Vial 2032. Excuse me. Looking at the guild master, I saw his lips curl further up. The butcher, that's the name assigned to the anomaly present within the gates incident of today. Staring at me with his deep eyes, his tone lowered. Is that your new identity? Chapter 490, Vial 2032, the butcher. Snake-like bastard. It was always like this. There was no reason for me to be surprised. And yet the deep sense of suffocation only heightened as the guild master smiled at me. My guess is not far off, correct? I swallowed quietly, my mouth bone dry as the guild master's gaze pressed down on me, its weight growing even heavier on my mind. I take your silence as conformity. No, you're wrong. I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded when I spoke. Given the situation, I had expected it to be shaky and nervous, but it was anything but. I'm wronged. Even the guild master looked taken aback by my words, as his brow rose momentarily. Pursing my lips, I quietly nodded. I'm not the butcher. I had considered it as I made my way toward the guild master, but in the end, I decided not to reveal my new identity to him. We were in a cooperative relationship, but that didn't mean I had to tell him everything. We worked together, but that didn't mean that I trusted him. I couldn't reveal all my cards for that reason alone, especially to someone I didn't know much about. Is that so? The guild master's eyes flickered for a brief moment, his gaze never leaving me. Under that weight, the suffocating pressure I'd felt earlier intensified further, to the point where I could feel my hand trembling beneath my clothes. I take it that this isn't you keeping it to yourself, because you're being wary of me, right? This snake. That's not the case. I was surprised by my ability to remain calm under these circumstances. There was no denying the fact that he was seeing right through me, but it was also true that he had no concrete proof to pin the fact that I was the so-called butcher. You're rather adamant about this. Because I am being wrongly accused. If you say so. And that's how the topic was dropped. But for some reason, staring at the guild master, it felt like the complete opposite. I took a deep breath and tried to calm my nerves, but the calmer I felt, the more it seemed like he was seeing through me. How did I look? Was my face pale? Was I sweating too much? Just what about me was making him look at me like this? I really did end up making a deal with the devil. Since I've got no evidence and I'm just going by a hunch, I'll believe you. In that case, there's something else that I want to ask you. Here it comes. I mentally prepared myself while staring at the guild master. I knew exactly what sort of question was awaiting me, and sure enough, it came a moment after. What exactly happened? He paused, his hands interlocking before him. What exactly happened in Malavia? I assumed you were the jester, but it appears not to be the case, more like you were working with the jester. Or did you use some sort of doppelganger? But that wouldn't make sense since I didn't notice anything amiss. What exactly is the truth? The simple mention of a doppelganger was enough to send tremors down my spine and heart. Yet again, this man seemed to read right through my thoughts. Thankfully, he was only giving it a guess as I observed his reaction as calmly as possible. Eventually, I spoke. No, there was no doppelganger. They were both me. Both? Leaning forward a bit, the guild master looked intrigued. He nudged me with his hand, indicating for me to continue. I took a moment to adjust my thoughts before speaking. Given the extreme circumstances that I was facing, I had no choice but to split my body into two different bodies. It was a last-ditch attempt in order for me to preserve my life. The guild master's brow rose in surprise, seemingly taken aback by the fact that I could split my body in two. Of course, that was nonsense. The less he knew, the better. I placed my main consciousness inside the jester while sending the other body away. The reason I created a gate was to get used to the new body. Coordinating between the two bodies, I was able to eventually find the demon and get rid of it. In the last moments, I also made sure to kill the jester while actually transferring my consciousness back to my real body. I sprinkled a lot of bullshit in my explanation. This much was true, but it wasn't like I had a choice. I couldn't reveal any hints about the system that I had. If the truth got out, then I was as good as dead. Even now, I remember the system's warning. Nobody could know about the system. At least so long as they're human. Dentalian did learn about the system, but I was still alive. This meant that demons were fine. Ahem. Listening to my entire explanation, the guild master didn't speak. Instead, he leaned back on his chair while gently tapping the marble desk. I also chose to remain quiet while staring at him, feeling the silence around me stifling. The more I basked in the silence, the more nervous I became. I couldn't decipher a single thing about his thoughts, from his expression to his mannerisms. There was nothing that I could pick out as he sat back with a serene expression. But eventually, tiararar, tiararar. The silence was shattered as his phone rang. Giving a quick look, the guild master smiled as he turned his attention back to me. It's a pity, but it looks like we'll have to end our conversation here for now. There are quite a few things I wish to ask you, but they can wait. Enjoy your time at the branch. I'll keep in touch with you. Oh, yes. I stood up fast, maybe a little too fast, as I nearly gave away the fact that I was too eager to leave. No, perhaps I had already given it away, as the guild master smiled at me. In the end, I offered a small bow before leaving. Space. The call lasted about half an hour. It was an unexpected call, but a very important one. Once the guild master was finally done, he hung up his phone while staring at the empty seat before him. Fiddling with the phone in his hands, the guild master eventually set it down, his thoughts lingering on the conversation from moments earlier. Was I wrong? He began to subconsciously tap his finger against the marble desk. My haunch says that I'm not, but he appeared rather calm, so much that I'm starting to second-guess myself. Seth's composure was quite noteworthy. From the moment he entered the room to the moment he left, the guild master felt barely any fluctuation in his emotions or even his heartbeat. He was calm to an unsettling degree, and as he recalled those eyes, so deep they seemed capable of swallowing anyone who stared too long, the guild master found himself smiling. It's interesting, he mumbled quietly, his fingers coming to a direct pause. When was the last time I've had a hard time reading someone? It's been a really long time. Leaning back in his chair, the guild master slowly turned to face the cityscape below. He stared at the slow-moving cars beneath, alongside the numerous pedestrians who moved about from place to place. He's still a bit raw, but I'm sure he'll get there in the future. A look of satisfaction marred his features as a pair of dimples appeared on his cheeks. He'll make a great guild master. Chapter 491, Vial 2032, The Butcher. Each section chief had their own office. While nowhere near as spacious as the guild master's, it was still moderately sized and well-decorated, offering a clear view of the streets below. How are you feeling? There was a look of concern on the hoarding department section chief's face as he looked at the young woman sitting opposite him. I've looked through the footage, and I can tell that this was no normal anomaly. I've already sent a team to get more information. Although none of you are harmed, I'm just asking again to make sure that nothing is wrong. I'm fine, Catherine replied flatly. Sitting down cross-legged, she held no real expression. But it was such an expression that made the section chief sweat. Are you sure you're fine? If you want, we can provide you with some sort of compensation of sorts and even hire a therapy. The section chief's words stopped abruptly as he stared at the slowly changing expression on Catherine's face, and he hurriedly shook his hands. No, that's not what I meant. I was just thinking that. Cut the bullshit. Catherine's eyes narrowed as she stared at the section chief, her tone low as her expression gradually twisted. You're just trying to coax me because you're waiting for me to renew the contract with the guild, right? No, that's far from the case. Are you taking me for stupid? As I said, I'm not. Bullshit. Catherine's hand slammed down against the armrest of the sofa as she stood up, her expression twisting with fury. She grabbed the nearest thing she could find and hurled it at the floor. Bang! Glass shattered. And yet the section chief didn't show much of a reaction. In fact, he had grown used to Catherine's tantrums. He had grown used to them for quite some time. This was her true personality. It gave the section chief many headaches. Thankfully, this personality only carried within the guild, and not outside. The world knew her as an up-and-coming paragon in the making with a bubbly personality, while those within the guild knew her as the guild's crazy demon. She had always been like this, but things truly twisted the moment her parents died. That was when she became even more twisted. Please calm down, the section chief said, doing his best to soothe her. I understand why you're angry, but I'm not doing this for any ulterior motives. I'm genuinely concerned for you. What happened wasn't normal, and it's only natural to have negative feelings about it. Bang. Another object shattered. That's not the reason I'm fucking pissed, is it? There are a lot of things that piss me off, and that's just one more added to the pile. Grabbing another item, she was just about to toss it when she stopped. Eventually, she set it down. Tusk. Her tongue clicked. As if she had grown tired of tossing and breaking objects, she sat down on the chair and crossed her legs while propping her cheek over her raised fist. That bitch is about to come soon. I heard that she only recently reached the 5th order. I've reached that way before her, but somehow everyone seems to be praising her to the moon. That's one thing that pisses me off. Let's not talk about the guy who ended up coming early. That lucky dude. Catherine clicked her tongue again, this time, her expression marred with even more annoyance. It's clear from a glance that he got lucky. Do you know how fucking hard it was to pretend in front of that guy? Pisses me off just thinking about it. Fuck. Loosening up her uniform, Catherine turned her attention towards the section chief. I wanted to see him in action today, but he ended up ditching. Maybe it's a good thing that he didn't go, given what had happened, but the more I think about it, the more annoyed I feel. Feeling her gaze, the section chief calmly bent down and picked up the fragments of the items that she had broken. In spite of everything that had happened, he didn't look at all pissed. Don't worry, I'm also quite annoyed by his appearance, too. He's a bit of an eyesore, isn't he? Catherine said, watching silently as the section chief bent down to clean up the items she had shattered across the floor. Especially with all the attention he's receiving from the guild master. At this rate, he'll probably be the face of the guild during the World Congress. I know, the section chief replied, rubbing his clean-shaven face as he adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses. He nudged some of the broken pieces aside with his foot before sitting on the edge of his desk and leaning back against the chair. Regarding the situation, I'll keep a close eye on it, and I share your opinion about him as well. You should be the one leading the guild at the World Congress. If some unknown game developer who just got lucky with a single gate ends up taking the lead, will become the laughingstock of the world. I won't let that happen, especially when you're here. Good. Catherine stood up, her expression easing quite a bit. Adjusting her clothes, she headed for the door. As she did, the section chief stood up. About the contract. I'll think about it. Clank. The door closed immediately after that, leaving the section chief frozen mid-motion. Space. The days at the branch guild passed rather slowly. Well, time flowed the same, but it felt like it moved a lot slower. An incident occurred during the last gate expedition, so the gates were temporarily closed. Even though I had no interest in entering them, it didn't mean that I didn't want to see how the members of this branch guild operated and handled the gates. In fact, it was a pity. And because of this, there was essentially nothing to do the entire time. I just stayed in my office, working on updating the game with the little resources I had, while staying connected with the others to get the update going. The progress was good, but not good enough. At the same time, I also started to feel better. The voices still lingered, but I was faring much better than before. Fuck, I really need them to come faster. At this rate, I'll never be able to get it done in time. Time was running short for me. Clank. Closing down my laptop, I leaned back and rubbed my eyes. Just closing them stung. This was how tired my eyes were from having stared at my screen for so long. I was also extremely tired. So much so that I didn't even notice the darkness creeping in at the edges of my vision, closing in until it finally swallowed everything. By the time I opened my eyes again, Kyle looked down on me with the eyes of a grim reaper. Are you alive? I checked my heart, it was beating. Maybe I think so, perhaps. What sort of nonsense? Hello? It finally clicked to me then as I sat up. You're finally here. I am. Wait, what sort of reaction is this? Kyle stepped away from me, his expression containing both annoyance and relief. What? I almost died. We haven't seen each other for so long, and neither of us was even able to get in contact with the other. Is this really your first reaction when you see me? Oh, right. So this was the reason for his reaction. I nodded. I'm glad you're back. Kyle clicked his tongue. At least try to sound sincere. I am, though, I really am. Is that so? Kyle tilted his head, examining me closely as he frowned. He eventually shook his head. What? Maybe you really are dead. Those eyes of yours. He held both sides of his arm. I'm getting shivers just looking at them. They look so dead. They. Neither one of us spoke. And then, we both grinned at each other. Glad you're doing fine, you son of a bitch. Same. Chapter 492, Guild Dinner 1. I see that you're not doing so bad yourself, and here I was all worried about you. Kyle said as he gripped the metal armrest, leaning back against the leather cushioning and letting out a satisfied sigh. He muttered under his breath, "Lucky bastard, not even my chair at the guild is this good, and this is just a guest chair." I ignored his useless grumbling and took a good look at him. He seems to be doing fine. I was honestly quite worried. I had been for quite some time. Thinking about what I had done to him, a part of me felt extremely guilty. The Kyle that stood before me. He was no longer human. So, have you suddenly become mute after meeting me? Not quite. The words finally left my lips as I took a deep breath and took a good look at him. His complexion was a little pale, but in general he looked fine. There was nothing about his appearance that gave away his status as an anomaly. In fact, it was pretty much impossible to even tell he was an anomaly. I'm glad that's the case. I'm thinking of updating my latest game. What? What? What do you mean, what? Kyle looked at me with a baffled expression, his hand rising to cover his face as he muttered, "Can you believe this guy?" I pursed my lips. I'm a game developer. I'm obviously going to focus on my games. I wasn't quite satisfied with my latest game, so I decided to update it. I'm thinking of addressing many of its major flaws. It'll do well. Listening to me, Kyle's face appeared to be a mix of both amusement and frustration. Are you still going to run with that game developer thing? But I am one. Are you now? Kyle tossed his phone over. A single glance was enough for me to understand, and I quickly shut up and caught it. There were countless headlines, many of them ones I had seen before. Seth Thorne severed Stars Guild's secret weapon. Who is he? Will he manage to rank in the upcoming rankings? The man who cleared the Malavia gate. What will become of him, next super rookie? I put the phone back down. They're speaking nonsense. It was all luck. Kyle remained quiet, reaching for his phone. Sure. No, really. Okay. I'm telling the truth. And I said okay. Should I have beaten him harder back then? Fine. In the end, I gave up. How are you doing? I ended up asking him the thing I was most curious about. Even though my mind wasn't completely lucid, I still remembered everything that had happened. I also remembered how I had forcefully shattered his node to convert him into an anomaly. I had been fully aware when I had done it. It had to be done. That was the only way to defeat the demon. There was no other way. In the end, using my abilities, I turned him into an anomaly and captured him, saving him and capturing the demon as well. Everything worked out in the end, but only on the outside. I didn't truly know how Kyle was doing. Me? Kyle shrugged his shoulders while massaging the back of his neck. I'm doing quite well, if I have to say. He lifted both arms and moved them freely, as if trying to show me that he was completely fine. And he did look fine, but the more normal he looked, the more my heart clenched. I'm generally doing fine, at least in most places. I did break quite a lot of bones, but if I have to say so myself, I think most of them have healed by now. There's nothing that is really stopping me from going back into action. Oh, yeah. He looked at me with a smile. Even my nodes are fine. In the end, I didn't really suffer much. I guess you can say that I got lucky, haha. Leaning back once more, Kyle laughed. Seeing his smile, I forced one myself. I'm glad that's the case. But soon Kyle leaned forward. But hey, there's really not much to worry about. I've been cleared medically for everything. I'll soon start my training for the Congress. You should start too. Your team is waiting for you. At this point, I'm shocked that they've yet to forget about you. Crazy bastard. How long has it been since you've last been with them? Too long. You? I opened my mouth to answer, but was stopped by Kyle. Never mind. Kyle shook his head, placing his hands on the table and standing up. You're a game developer, right? That's what you were going to tell me, wasn't it? How did he know? It's because you always say the same thing. Shaking his head, Kyle turned around and headed for the door. In any case, I'll take my leave. I'm glad that you're doing fine. There are still a few things that I need to do, but I should be done soon. Will you be here for the guild dinner later? Likely. That's good, I'll see you there. Nodding slightly, Kyle proceeded to leave the room. In the end, I could only stare at his retreating figure in silence, basking in the silence he left behind. He looks fine. I bit my lips. But is he really fine? Space. Clank. Crazy lucky bastard. Stepping out of Seth's office, Kyle paused and glanced back at the door. The longer he looked at it, the more jealousy crept in. How long had he been working in the guild? What sort of rank had he reached? And yet, I've yet to receive my own office. Clicking his tongue, Kyle walked away. His mental health demanded it. But he didn't even get to move a couple of steps when a voice suddenly called for him. Kyle. A head peeked out from behind one of the corridor's white pillars. Her emerald eyes narrowed like those of a cat as she looked around, seemingly looking to see if there was someone else with him. Don't worry, he's not here. Who is not here? Stepping out of the pillar, her long lashes fluttered. I'm not looking for anyone. I know. Kyle merely smiled. Zoe's lips twitched, her gaze flickering towards a certain office for a brief moment before she coughed and turned serious. How are you doing? Not you too. What, I'm just checking up. You've seemed a little bit out of it lately. That's because I'm mentally drained. Well. Scratching the side of her neck, allowing her soft blonde hair to gracefully fall over her shoulders, Zoe eventually nodded. I can't say I don't understand you. We've been put through a lot, especially with the last incident, and with the upcoming World Congress, I'm struggling to keep my mind sane. Right. I guess. Zoe shrugged, her expression easing a little. Turning her wrist and checking the time, she looked at Kyle. In that case, I'll head out and get myself ready for dinner. Rest a bit. I will. Kyle smiled as he watched Zoe turn around and leave. He stared at her parting back for a couple of seconds before he suddenly called out for her. Zoe? Oh, yes. Still walking, Zoe turned her head. Kyle's smile grew as he spoke. He's also doing Finn. Claw K. Tripping over her legs, Zoe stumbled forward. Chapter 493, Guild Dinner 2. The room was simple, furnished with all the necessities. A bathroom, a wardrobe, and most importantly, a bed. Best of all was the view from the higher floor, offering a clear sight of the city streets below. Such was the bedroom that Kyle had been given. This is nice. Stepping out of the shower and tightening the towel around his waist, he brushed his dirty blonde hair back and stared down at the streets below for a long moment. He allowed himself to bask in the silence around him before walking back to the bathroom to do his skin care. While he wasn't extremely popular, he was getting there. He needed to maintain his image. A good image was always good. But there was a problem. It looks like I'll need some makeup. Kyle pinched the skin beneath his eyes. It was dark and sagging slightly. I'll start looking like Seth at this rate. There was a trace of amusement in Kyle's voice as he applied light makeup to hide the dark circles, but beneath it lingered a quiet pain and exhaustion. Halfway through his motions, Kyle had no choice but to pause, bringing both hands to the sink as his hands started to tremble uncomfortably. He didn't experience any pain, but even if it was, he'd much prefer that. It's happening again. The trembles. This was what Kyle called them. He was still unsure what they truly were. They happened often, and he couldn't stop them. Parts of his body would suddenly begin to tremble, as if possessed, forcing him into a state of total paralysis. Ever since the incident, he had been experiencing these symptoms, only growing more frequent with each passing day, to the point that they occurred in his sleep, forcing him awake and preventing him from sleeping. He thought it would only pass with time, but it's getting worse. Taking several deep breaths, Kyle raised his head. But as he did, his heart stopped. Because a face stared back at him. It was obscured, but the image was clear. His entire body froze at the sight, almost as if something or someone had taken over completely, rendering him completely immobile. The face stared at him in silence, sweat dripping from the side of his face as he stared back at the face. And then, everything returned to normal, the image fading as the mirror slowly clouded over. But despite everything fading, Kyle remained rooted in place, the dark circles beneath his eyes growing even more pronounced as he blinked slowly and mumbled, "What was I doing?" Uh, he reached for the makeup next to him and dipped his finger. Skincare, I'm doing skincare. Space. Well, I expected something a bit fancy considering the guild's wealth, but maybe I thought a little too much. Is this really the right place? Central Kebab. I checked my phone to see if I was in the right location, but it really did seem to be the case. I'm not wrong. Maybe it's some sort of disguise. I smacked my fist against my open palm. Now that makes sense. Why would the guild invite us to a kebab shop for the guild dinner? It obviously made no sense, especially since from the outside, the shop looked like one of the lower-quality kebab shops. Without any further hesitation, I reached for the metal handle of the glass door and pulled it open. The moment I stepped inside, a heavy scent of char and spices washed over me. I subconsciously frowned. Tables were lined up along both sides of the room, with people seated on either side, laughing and toasting with one another. I caught sight of many familiar faces. But that wasn't what unsettled me. What bothered me was the fact that this place was truly a kebab shop. They're really going to host a guild dinner here. I had to do a double take, but looking around once more and seeing that they were truly eating kebabs, and with some beers at that, I decided to give up. I liked kebab too. Approaching the nearest table, I pointed at one of the chairs. Can I sit here? Yes, huh. All of a sudden, it was as if everyone at the table had stiffened at once. A quick glance was all it took for me to realize what was going on. I guess they're still in shock with what happened back in Malovia. So, the poor guy looked at the others on the table only for them to look away. In the end, he forced a smile. Yes, please, sit. So I did. I even ordered myself some kebab with rice. Make sure to add a lot of sauce. The white one specifically. I'm not very good at dealing with spicy food. The moment I placed my order, I glanced around the room. For the most part, everyone present was a member of the branch guild. Those from the main guild had yet to arrive, leaving me as the only one there from it. There was no one that I could strike up a conversation with, not that I was interested in talking with anyone. In fact, I felt extremely uncomfortable. So many strangers. Keeping my expression steady, I quietly hoped my order would arrive sooner as I scrolled mindlessly through my phone. I wasn't even sure what I was looking at, my thoughts drifting far from the screen. I was just scrolling for the sake of scrolling. I hope my food gets here faster. Does that page look interesting? Turning around, a pair of emerald eyes stared at me. A bubbly smile greeted me ashort, while later as Catherine sat in front of me. The crazy bitch is back. She then pointed at my phone again. I saw that you were looking at the same article multiple times. Is it interesting? I looked down at my phone. My cold CEO is my baby, S. I didn't know you weren't into that stuff. Is it good? Impassable. No, passable what? I didn't even know what it was. Should I give it a read? Yes, it's really good. The bubbly smile faltered for a brief moment before she leaned back in her chair. When I glanced around again, I realized that everyone who had been sitting beside me just moments earlier was gone. It was just Catherine and me now, and the many stares fixed on us from every direction. I'm honestly really surprised you're into this stuff. I thought that you'd be really busy considering all the work that you have, but maybe I was wrong. Leaning back against the chair, she fiddled with her phone. Is it the same with my sister? Is she into this stuff? I don't know. You do? Are you not very close to my sister? I thought you were. Not real. Tusk. I raised my head. Did she just? Damn randoms. So she was talking about a game. Sorry about that. Lifting her head, she quickly apologized. I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about something else. There's this gam. Catherine's voice cut off halfway as she turned her attention toward the door. She wasn't the only one. People throughout the shop turned as well, and when I followed their gaze, a group I was all too familiar with stepped inside. But when I looked at them, specifically the section chief, I couldn't help but be taken aback by their expression. The one that looked as though they had eaten shit. Chapter 494, Guild Dinner 3. Did they say where we're going? No, but it's not very far. The GPS also doesn't seem to have much information on the place. It must be some sort of restaurant exclusive to the guild. The section chief replied calmly while following the GPS. From time to time, he would stop and tilt his phone to the side, as if that would actually help him get to the location faster. Kyle and the rest could only follow him in silence. They were already used to the section chief's bizarre antics. Thankfully, while he struggled to use the GPS, they soon found the place. But soon the section chief came to a stop. He stared blankly at the shop in front of him. Section chief. Taking note of his actions, everyone else stopped. They all soon turned to look in the direction of the shop. A kebab shop. Why are we in front of a kebab shop? Section chief. Hearing the numerous questions coming from behind him, the section chief didn't answer. Instead, he continued to stare at the shop while alternating his gaze between the sign and his phone. The more he alternated between the two, the more his expression contorted. Wait, don't tell me this is the place. As if finally realizing something, the faces of a few turned strange. There's no way, right? However, looking at the section chief's face, the hearts of many sank. To be honest, I think it's probably a disguise. Given the nature of the dinner, there's a good chance that this is just a front for the guild dinner. It's most likely different inside. Noticing the mood, Kyle tried his best to offer an excuse for the situation. However, his words only made the section chief's face crumble more. Kyle's heart sank, especially when he heard the section chief's mumbled, "What front? These bastards and their usual tricks." Kyle scratched the side of his face, turning to look at Zoe, who was staring intently at the sign on top. Eventually, the group entered the shop. Kyle hoped. He hoped his earlier guess would prove correct, but that hope was quickly crushed. The moment the group entered the shop, the atmosphere fell silent as they found nothing more than an average-sized kebab shop, one that didn't even have enough seats to accommodate all of them. The section chief's already crumbling expression fell even further. Moments later, a figure approached them, lips pulled into a thin smile as he adjusted his gold-framed glasses. Ha, if it isn't the famous section chief of the containment department. It was a friendly greeting. I hope you don't mind the location of the dinner. We were previously thinking of going to a better place, but given how the entire world is currently sensitive to us, I thought this would be the best place for our groups to finally meet each other. He looked extremely amiable, even apologetic, but the section chief's face remained cold as he stared at the figure standing in front of him. He must be really angry. This was one of the few times Kyle had ever seen the section chief wear such an expression. It stood in stark contrast to his usual lethargic, dead look. But it wasn't as if he couldn't understand. There had always been some level of tension between the main guild and the branch guild. Despite being only a branch guild, they consistently saw themselves as superior to the main guild, a mindset that had led to several past conflicts. Holding a guild dinner in a kebab shop was no coincidence. It's been a while. Thankfully, the section chief was able to keep his cool as he shook the man's hand. I didn't expect the dinner to be in such a place. You guys really outdid yourselves. Haha, like I said, circumstances. Hey. Just then, Kyle felt a small tap on his shoulder. Turning around, he saw Rowan's hand pointing in a certain direction. Look. Turning his attention towards where she pointed, Kyle's attention fell on a certain table. His expression turned quickly strange. He wasn't the only one. He could see many expressions turn strange as two figures sat at the table, one trying to eat his food while the other tried to chat with him and steal it. Relax, I'm just getting a taste. No. There's so much sauce. I like it this way. Your tastes are weird. I know. About the novel. Their conversation was also strange. Novel, what novel? Wait. But as if finally recognizing the girl sitting opposite Seth, Kyle's expression turned even stranger as he turned to look in Zoe's direction. She, too, was staring at the two, but her expression was stiff as a rock. As if she couldn't believe the scene in front of her. You've got some sauce on your face, let me wipe it. No. If not for the visible annoyance on Seth's face, one might think the two were dating. In fact, they weren't the only ones shocked. Pretty much everyone within the room, besides a few, looked shocked as the noise died down a little. Thankfully, as if finally noticing Zoe, Catherine stopped, her eyes lighting up. Sister, she called out in a bubbly voice, jumping out of her seat and rushing towards Zoe. With her arms spread open, she hugged her tightly. I missed you. Zoe's expression twitched. We just saw each other. So I still missed you. Zoe opened her mouth but soon closed it. She seemed to give in as she let her sister hug her. At the same time, her gaze unconsciously drifted toward Seth, who was wiping his forehead with an unmistakable look of relief. A smile subconsciously formed on her lips as she saw this. Seeing this, Kyle's expression grew strange. Then, as a thought occurred to him, it shifted even further, and he slowly opened his mouth. But, I didn't even say anything. Your expression said a lot, I don't. But, I'll gouge your eyes out. And so Kyle stopped speaking. Thinking about it, he knew it was nonsense. Now that we're here, might as well enjoy the dinner. The guild master said that he won't be attending, so there's no need to be stiff, and if I have to say so myself, the kebab here is absolutely amazing. Plus, there will be drinks. As the hoarding section chief of the branch guild spoke, the eyes of a few lit up. In particular, team leader Soren's face as she audibly gulped. Drinks. The faces of several grew stiff, but before anyone could voice out anything, the section chief extended his hand to his right and nodded. Let's do that. Question marks appeared on the heads of many, some alternating their gazes between the section chief and the team leader. In the end, the branch leader section chief laughed. That's excellent. I assure you the kebab here is quite good. Please, let's continue further down. There are other section chiefs who are eager to meet you. We've heard quite a bit about you. Patting the section chief on the back, he paused, turning his attention towards the others. I hope you all enjoy yourselves as well. As I mentioned, the kebab here is quite good. Please feel free to sit wherever you prefer. There is seating available throughout. Although he said this, it was not actually the case. From the looks of things, not everyone would be able to find a seat. Aware of this, the others exchanged glances, but before anyone could voice a concern, the section chief of the branch guild led the section chief away. This left everyone else in an awkward position. They're doing it on purpose, aren't they? As Rowan mumbled, Kyle could only force a smile as he turned his attention towards team leader Soren. He wasn't worried about the situation. He was more worried about her. Will this really be okay? I wonder. Kyle replied, pursing his lips together as he looked at the excited team leader. I wonder. Chapter 495, Guild Dinner 4. Come, have a seat with us. I do once again apologize for the venue, but I assure you this is one of the best kebab places that you can find. The section chief of the hoarding department, Clement White, guided everyone to a separate table in the shop, where the other section chiefs from the branch guild were gathered along with several team leaders. The members from the main guild glanced over at those already seated, exchanging nods and offering brief greetings. It's nice to see you. It's been a while. That was all. Just a brief greeting before they returned to their conversation. This didn't go unnoticed by those from the main guild, but no one said anything as the gold-rimmed section chief laughed and gestured toward the table. Come, let's have a seat and talk. There's quite a lot that we need to catch up on. His friendliness was hard to refuse as everyone got seated. There are drinks for everyone, and if anybody wants to order something, feel free to do so. This is all on us. He began to pour drinks into the cups of everyone present. Seeing him act like this, the tension eased up slightly. Soon, Section Chief White sat down as he poured himself a drink. I can tell the mood here is a bit tense, but there's really no need for it to be. I know this is just a kebab shop, but I'm sure you all understand our current circumstances. It's not that I'm trying to slight anyone. He eyed the team leaders and the section chief as he spoke. I want our relationship to be good. I don't want us to have any conflicts or anything like that. That's why I want us to be more relaxed with each other. This place is also fitting for such an atmosphere. It truly did seem like he meant those words. But not everyone believed his words. So you want us to be more relaxed with each other? Team leader Soren asked, her eyes drifting over the many drinks laid out before her as her fingers brushed restlessly against each other. That doesn't sound too bad. I'm glad you think so, Section Chief White replied, taking a good sip of his drink as he placed it on the table. I want all of us to be relaxed, especially since we're soon going to be taking part in the World Congress. It's important that we all have a harmonious relationship if we want to achieve a good ranking, and for that to happen. The section chief paused as he reached for his drink again, gulped down the last of it, then set the glass aside and looked toward the main guild's section chief. I hope you can let us lead in the Congress. Space. The dinner was going smoothly. Despite the small hiccup at the start, everyone eventually got seated. Well, for the most part. Some had no choice but to squeeze onto the same seat. My table was especially full. So, squad leader, how have you been doing? It's been a while since we've heard from you. How are you doing? I'm fine. But you looked so weird during the broadcast. What really happened? I'm sure you all know by now. But is it true? Sort of. I was lucky. I was surrounded by my squad members. Although it had been a while since I had last gone on an expedition with them, I still saw them quite a bit back in the guild. They all seemed very interested in what I had been doing. I answered as patiently as possible while eating the kebab. I guess they weren't lying when they said that it's really good. It was good. Much better than I anticipated. But I couldn't quite enjoy the kebab as much as I wanted to. Not when I was being stared at from all directions. I massaged my face. It feels like I'm in the zoo. You sure are grabbing a lot of attention. How does that feel? I'm sure the PR team will be all over you soon enough. Lifting my head, I was met with a bubbly smile. Catherine rested her chin in both hands, her legs swinging lightly beneath the table as her smile grew even sweeter. I felt my innards curl at her smile. This crazy bitch, just what sort of stunt was she trying to pull? It's important that you go talk with the PR team. A person's image is extremely important. This industry isn't just about going through gates and removing anomalies. It's also about maintaining image and sponsorship. The more money, the better, right? I was just about to reply to her when I stopped. Wait, did she just say money? I blinked a couple of times, my mind churning as I thought back to her words. Zoe and Kyle's figures stood out in my mind. Indeed, don't the two make a lot from sponsorships? As far as I'm aware, Zoe makes a lot of money from her modeling gig, while Kyle also gets quite a lot of money from similar endeavors. Since I rarely went out with them, I wasn't fully aware of just how famous they were, though I knew they were well known. Every so often, I'd catch sight of posters or billboards bearing their faces. I had never bothered since I was more preoccupied with my games and everything else that was around me, but now that I thought about it carefully, this wasn't something that I could ignore, especially since I was in desperate need of money. Money, yes, money is everything. I need more money in order to acquire more fragments and buy SB points. Previously, my games were my only source of money, but with everything that had happened, I now had another path to create money. My thoughts became clear as I raised my head. What do I need to do? To be honest, your appearance isn't too bad. It's just that you can look quite scary. But still, you might not need to go there for your appearance, you can, huh? As if not expecting my answer, her expression momentarily froze. She wasn't the only one. Kyle, Zoe, and everyone else who was around me stopped, their eyes widening slightly as they all turned to look in my direction. I massaged my face again. No, seriously, am I really not in a zoo? Wait, what? Kyle was the first one to speak up, his head snapping in my direction. Are you really interested in this stuff? You, who hates attention and interacting with people. I felt my brows furrow at Kyle's words. Aim. Quickly realizing what he had said, Kyle coughed. I'm just saying. I'm surprised that you would be interested in something like this, considering how you usually are. I know. Then, I need money. Kyle's lips parted, silently mouthing something along the lines of, but what about your ga? Only for him to stop short, as if a realization had just struck him. He then looked at me with clear pity. This guy? No, my game did not flop. Okay. It didn't. I believe you. I'm telling you my game is doing well. And I said I believe you. I gave up. Seeing the pity in his eyes deepen, I knew there was no way I could convince him. Even if I brought up the game's stats and everything else, he still wouldn't believe me. Worse still, he could probably look all of it up on the internet anyway. Oh, right, I did hear that you were a game developer. My attention fell on Catherine once more, as she stared at me with her bubbly smile. That could be something the PR team could work with. Let me check real quick. Turning her head, her attention fell on someone else a couple of tables away. She waved her hand. Patrick. Immediately, a young man with a bowl cut and a long nose paused mid-bite, his head slowly turning toward Catherine. He wasn't the only one. Several others turned as well, their gazes shifting in our direction as Catherine pointed at me. He seems pretty interested in doing some PR work. Why don't you help him out since you work there? I'm sure that with your skills, you might be able to help him out quite a lot. Hello? Patrick's gaze flickered over me for a moment before he shook his head. I wish I could help, but I've been quite swamped lately. Maybe another time. Oh, come on. Catherine dismissively waved her hand. I know you're busy, but you can't be that busy. I'm also sure your job won't be that hard. Everyone pretty much knows his face by now. There's a lot you can work with. Patrick paused, shooting me a sidelong look before turning away with a quiet scoff. Shaking his head, he muttered, Let S be real. Everyone knows it's all luck. His words were quiet, yet loud enough for all of us to hear, freezing the atmosphere in an instant. I wasn't particularly surprised, already familiar with their true thoughts after spending time in the branch guild. Still, when I turned my head, it wasn't the expressions on the others' faces that caught my attention. Something else drew my attention instead, my eyes pausing for a brief moment. But just as I was about to speak, a loud crashing sound echoed. Crash, followed by a loud voice. Y'all are fucking bastards, hic. The entire venue fell completely still as every head turned toward the noise. I followed suit, and that was when I finally noticed the woman standing there, a bottle of alcohol in her hand as she slurred her words. You all are fucking bastards, hic. She repeated, as if she had already forgotten she had said it moments earlier. You all think we're stupid, you're stupid, your mother is stupid, no, I'm your mother. Chapter 496, Guild Dinner 5. Smack. I could practically hear it. The sound of everyone from the main guild smacking their forehead as team leader Soren stood on top of a desk, holding onto a bottle of alcohol that looked like whiskey while waving it in the air and shouting. Stupid, I say, stupid. Hic, how could you disrespect your mother like this? There was no doubt about it. She was drunk beyond any measure. Bang! She tossed the bottle to the ground, where it shattered into hundreds of pieces, and glared at everyone seated at what had once been her table. One look at their expressions was enough to tell just how furious they were. Fucking what? Even is the point of doing this political bullshit. We're part of the same fucking hic guild. The team leader continued to slur over her words. In the meantime, I looked around me. It was strange. No matter how I looked at it, given the situation, everyone should have tried to stop her, but looking at the section chief alongside the other team leaders present, I realized that nobody was even considering stopping her. Did they also share the same thought? You won't say it, but I can. Fucking tell you'll think you're the hot shit while we're just the guys who take the credit and resources. You all think that those from the main island are better, nuo. Hic. The more she spoke, the colder the atmosphere seemed to become. Everyone could tell that she was drunk. Everyone could see that she was speaking nonsense. And yet her drunken speech seemed to hit the situation right on the nail. Instead of properly addressing us or showing your displeasure, you hic resort to such a roundabout way of spouting nonsense, as if the guild master would take pity on you. The team leader giggled, looking at the leaders from the branch guild with a ridiculing expression. You all think too highly of yourselves. You all know how the guild master hic is. He will never choose the weaker side. He'll always side with the side he think is bet hic woo-woo. Stopping halfway with her words, the team leader stumbled back a couple of steps as she nearly tripped on one of the tissues that had scattered on the ground. Thankfully, she was just able to stop herself from tripping as she directed her gaze towards a team leader from the branch guild. She smirked at him. You. The team leader stood up. W what? Soren glared back, raising both hands. You gonna hit a woman, a powerless one like that? No, that's... Her eyes fluttered as she covered her mouth and pretended to cry. How could you look at your mother like that? This bit. The team leader just barely held himself from swearing at her. But it wasn't as if Soren was going to stop there. If she stopped there, she wouldn't be Soren. Hic, to swear at your mother like this. You... I'm pregnant. And you're not the father. I'll kill her. Woo-woo, let's stop there. It was also at this moment that one of the other team leaders stood up. They all restrained the charging team leader. Let's relax for a moment. Relax? How can I relax when that crazy woman is spouting all that stuff? Let me handle this. One of the team leaders from the main guild stepped up. He was fairly handsome, with short blonde hair and blue eyes. However, I wasn't quite familiar with him, meaning that he was probably a team leader from another department. The team leader looked at everyone, his face lowering apologetically. I sincerely apologize for everything that's happened. I hope none of you were offended by her words. As you can see, she's had far too much to drink. I'll escort her out right away. Once again, I'm truly sorry for the disturbance. He lowered his head and brought Soren's hand over his shoulder. I'll be escorting her back to her room. Hicks, the baby, oh the baby. As he spoke, another team leader stood up as well. She was someone I didn't recognize, her curly hair falling to her shoulders as she brushed it aside to get a better grip on the drunken team leader. Moving to Soren's other side, she slipped an arm over her shoulder, helping support her as they prepared to escort her away. Let's go. Hick, but I'm not done yet. You, how could you just toss me aside like this? She suddenly turned her head in my direction. You evil bastard. Several heads turned to look at me. I suddenly felt uncomfortable. You think I'm some convenient bitch you can just toss after sleeping with? The stares felt even more uncomfortable. No, this. I hate you. SHH, you've already created too much of a mess. Quiet down. No, I don't want to know, Hick. In spite of her protests, the team leader was escorted out of the shop. The silence that followed was extremely uncomfortable, as all eyes remained fixed on the door. I had to say so myself, but the way they were all able to retain their calm was quite impressive. Not that they weren't mad. I could see that they were seething. Perhaps also noticing this, the section chief I was all too familiar with stood up from his chair. I apologize once more for what my team leader has done. For now, I think we've already introduced ourselves. I'll go and check up on them. He was the next to leave. As he left, his every step remained scrutinized under the gaze of the branch guild leaders, and soon enough, the other team leaders started to leave. I guess I'll take my leave too. Same for me. One by one, everyone began to leave. I guess I should go as well. Same. Kyle, Zoe, and the others also appeared to stand up. As they did, they looked at me. I looked away from them and onto my meal. My stomach rumbled. I looked up. Damn it. I guess you can catch up later. Yeah, there's no need to rush. They all soon left after that, leaving me alone. Feeling the numerous gazes directed my way, I sighed and picked up the fork. That crazy bitch. Space. Hicks hickla hick. A series of hiccups rang out as team leader Soren was carried out of the shop. With two team leaders supporting her on either side, her struggles were futile, leaving her unable to break free. Let Hicks me go. Her steps faltered more than once, but with the support of the two team leaders, she managed to stay on her feet. The scene attracted quite a bit of attention, but whenever someone looked for too long, the team leader would glare at them and shout, "What are you, Hick, looking at? I'll kill you." Her face didn't look threatening in the slightest, yet people still averted their gazes as the group of three made their way back toward the guild. As they moved on, the surroundings gradually grew more secluded, and it was there that the drunken look on Soren's face finally began to change. Okay, this is enough. The drunken haze that had clouded her features vanished, replaced by a clear look of irritation. I can't believe I had to leave so many drinks behind for some stupid political bullshit. They really never get tired of pulling this crap. Freeing herself from the other team leader's support, Soren smacked her lips together, trying to savor whatever lingering taste of alcohol she hadn't been able to enjoy back at the dinner. She eventually ruffled her hair, looking back in the direction of the dinner while shaking her head. Well, I guess it had to be done. If not, I really do think we would have started fighting. Placing her hands in her pocket, she looked at the other team leaders. Tell the section chief I won't be able to stick around for longer. This entire thing has left a bitter aftertaste in my mouth. Can't believe they want to take over the Congress like that. Fuck. Ruffling her head, she brushed her hair behind her ear. They weren't like this in the past. I also know the guild master is probably enjoying this. That sick bastard. Hey. What? Soren looked at the other team leader. Jack was it? She couldn't quite remember his name. Just maybe she was a little drunk. Come on, be real. You know damn well the guild master wants conflict to occur between us. The only thing he cares about is results. I'm sure he's taking this entire conflict with pleasure. Tusk. Clicking her tongue, Soren turned around and began to walk away. They're lucky I was told to hold back. Otherwise, I'd have smashed a few bottles over their heads and knocked some of them down. Keck. That would have been funny. Waving her hand, team leader Soren left. But just before she left, one of the team leaders spoke. But hey, why did you make the life of that guy so difficult? You didn't have to say things like that. You went overboard. I did. Soren stopped, looking up at the night sky. Eventually, she smirked. But I didn't lie. She giggled. We really did sleep together. The eyes of the team leaders widened to the point where they nearly felt like they would pop out at any second. Space. Puff. Smoke drifted in the air. Leaning back against a wall in a secluded area, Catherine took a drag from her cigarette while staring up at the moon. Her bubbly, cheerful smile was long gone as she gazed at the sky with a distant, hazy look. The departure of those from the main guild marked the end of the guild dinner. It ended early, but the goal had been achieved. Thinking back on the section chief's words, Catherine rested her head against the wall she was leaning on. As she did, a certain image surfaced in her mind. Her expression twisted as a curse slipped out of her lips. Fucking disgusting. She soon flicked the cigarette in her hand. Massaging her face, her expression twisted further as she thought about how she'd had to put on an act in front of everyone, all while trying to butter up that guy. Just the thought made her feel repulsed, and it wasn't like it brought anything to fruition. The only reason she even interacted with him was that she was interested in knowing more about that sister of hers. Given how her sister would mention him on occasion, she thought they were somewhat close. But it didn't seem to be the case. It was a fucking waste of time. The more she interacted with him, the more repulsed she felt by him. Catherine clicked her tongue and reached into her pocket for another cigarette. Just as her fingers brushed her jeans, she froze, lifting her head and turning to the right where she felt a presence. Tech. A pair of dark eyes watched her from a distance, causing her to freeze for a brief second. Then slowly her lips curved into a smile. A cheerful smile. It's you, how are you? You can stop the act. An emotionless voice drew out as the figure approached, his appearance gradually revealed beneath the faint glow of a street lamp, until he came to a stop not far from her. Pausing, his gaze dropped to the cigarette butt on the ground before he stepped on it. I don't understand your relationship with your sister, but don't drag me into your nonsense, especially when you try to act close to me. He paused before adding, it's creepy. Lifting his head, Seth looked at Catherine. Feeling his gaze, her smile faded, replaced by that familiar look of irritation. Her lips parted, but just as she was about to speak, Seth spoke first. A crazy bitch. Chapter 497, Changing One. Catherine's entire body froze, her eyes slowly widening as her motions paused, and she looked at the dark eyes staring right at her. Her mind blanked under the scrutinizing gaze. The more she looked at them, the more unbelievable she felt the situation was. What did you just call me? Catherine had to do a double take. Perhaps her hearing was off and she didn't hear correctly. Right, it had to be that. There's no way. Crazy bitch. Bang. Her fist smacked against the wall behind her. Lifting her head to stare at Seth, her expression twisted. The fuck did you just call me? Do I have to repeat myself? Seth's words remained cold, but beneath that coldness Catherine felt it, the faint trace of annoyance in the way he looked at her. Huh? Catherine laughed. It was the only thing she could do under this ridiculous situation. He's out of his mind, he's really lost it. Was it overconfidence in his abilities, or was he just dumb? Whatever it was, Catherine didn't care as her eyes narrowed. Composing herself, she crossed her arms and leaned back. This time she didn't bother smiling. She didn't even bother hiding her disgust towards him. Even her tone was cold. Did the success get to your head? Is that why you're speaking the way that you are to me? Or is it because you're no longer alone? Now that everyone from the main guild is here, you're no longer afraid of acting out. I bet your personality was shit like this from the start. That's funny coming from you. Me PFF. Catherine laughed. You're funny, I give you that. It was obvious to her. The fame had gotten into his mind. Otherwise, why in the fuck would he even talk that way to her? Clicking her tongue, the smile slipped from her face once more as she leaned against the wall, arms crossed, her finger tapping restlessly against her arm. You're starting to overrate yourself and your abilities. I wasn't there, but everyone has heard the truth about what happened back in Malavia. You were just in the right place at the right time. You were aided by that weird anomaly that just so happened to be a creation from a weird cult. Taking a step forward, Catherine's brows furrowed as she pressed a hand against Seth's chest, the irritation on her face clearer than ever. Let me repeat, stop overrating yourself and your abilities. Catherine made sure to emphasize each word carefully. Just one look at him, and she knew that she had to make her point clear. He had to be put in his place before things got annoying. But, are you done? It was obvious that Seth didn't take her words to heart. In fact, his expression hardly changed as he swatted her finger away from his chest. Feeling Catherine's glare, Seth quietly fixed his clothes. I am very well aware of my own capabilities. If we're talking about pure skill, then I don't doubt for 1 second that you would be able to beat me. In fact, I would argue that everyone here is more capable than me. Smirk. Catherine smirked. What are you trying to get with your point? My point is that I never asked to be famous, nor did I ever ask to stumble across a random cult or for anyone to pay special attention to me. The only thing I want to do is create my games. Games? Are you fucking with me? I'm not. Seth apathetically replied, his tone calm. I've always aimed to do my own thing. I never asked to be bothered and do other things. It just so happens that I'm quite unlucky. I also don't care about what you think about me. To be honest, I am not one to care much about what others think about me. But this isn't why I am here to see you. All of a sudden, Seth's eyes narrowed. Feeling the weight of his gaze, Catherine tensed involuntarily. It lasted only a moment before she realized what had happened, her teeth clenching tightly. This boss. I don't like to be used. Seth rubbed the back of his neck, his eyes flickering with a coldness that made the words rising in Catherine's throat stall as he continued to look at her. I don't know what's going on between you and Zoe, nor do I care. However, it was obvious that you were acting the way that you were in order to get a reaction from her. I don't like that. I would kindly wish for you to stop it. And if I do... If you do... Seth paused, his expression shifting into something faintly odd before he shook his head and turned away. I wonder... You wonder what? Seth shrugged, not bothering any more. Catherine's face turned red as she shouted. Hey, answer me, get back here. But... Why aren't you talking? Fucking get back here, I'm talking to you. Seth never looked back. Hey... Space. How fast did indigestion pills work? It felt like I needed more than one. Maybe I should get an entire box. Rubbing my stomach, I paused and looked up at the sky. The moon hung in the darkness, lighting up the clouds as the night breeze brushed against my skin, making my gray coat flutter softly. I didn't really know what came over me. Thinking back on my interaction with Catherine, it felt out of character for me to have spoken to her so directly. I was usually someone who preferred to avoid trouble and unnecessary interactions. If anything, I would have simply ignored it. While she could be bothersome at times, it wasn't to the point of being truly annoying. In fact, I would argue that things would probably become more annoying now. But it just felt like I had to do it. To some extent, it felt refreshing. The same was true when I directly targeted the anomaly that had been focusing on me. Even though it turned out to be a trap, if I were placed in a similar situation again, I'd probably make the same choice. I was changing. This much had become clear to me. But what was the reason for my change? Was it due to the knife, the previous experience as the jester, or something else entirely? No. I pursed my lips. I was thinking about things the wrong way. The real question was, is this a good or a bad change? Should I have let things play out like I normally did? Should I have just minded my own business and dealt with things when they eventually came to me? Or... A mild night breeze drifted through the air, brushing against my skin and hair. My skin prickled under the cool wind, and as I lifted my head to stare at the moon, I questioned myself. Should I stop letting myself change? Should I go back to how I was, or do I go all the way? I mumbled, closing my eyes. But you know... I silently smirked while bringing my hands to my pockets. I think I've long realized this after entering this industry, even though I never wanted to be a part of it. I lazily opened one eye and stared at the moon that hung in the sky. The corners of my lips unconsciously rose. I keep thinking that maybe, just maybe, I quite like this too, that I really want to go all the way in. Chapter 498, Changing 2. The next day was a hectic one. It started with a lecture from a team leader I wasn't familiar with. There will be a new ranking announced in the next couple of days. What sets us apart from the major guilds is the fact that we don't have any ranked individuals within our guild. Or to be precise, we don't have any paragons. She wore round glasses large enough to cover nearly a quarter of her face as she spoke sternly to everyone from both the guild and the branch guild. We had all gathered early in the morning to talk about the upcoming ranking announcement. In all honesty, I didn't pay much attention to it. Why would I? I was quite certain that I wasn't going to be ranked. Taking away my achievements in Malavia Island, there wasn't anything else that I had done to warrant a ranking. I was also very clearly not as strong as Clara or Kyle, or anyone else. That's unless I use the knife or do some crazy nonsense like last time, but I'm not really keen on doing that again. I also can't allow myself to get exposed. That'll be troublesome. In summary, while interesting, there were more pressing matters. Like getting the update done. In the following days, an invitation will be sent to those who will be allowed to participate in the ranking announcement. If you receive an invitation, it'll mean that you will have a chance of making it within the ranking. The guild will make sure to provide accommodation and means of transportation for when that happens. Just being invited is an honor, and the PR team will spare no effort to push your image up. The team leader continued to ramble on for quite some time. Everyone listened attentively, their expressions serious, though a few faces showed hints of excitement. I could see that there were quite a few that held some sort of expectation. It looked like this invitation meant quite a lot to them. Even Kyle, Zoe, Rowan, and a few others I was familiar with showed similar expressions. They really care about it that much. The invitations will be sent to your desk directly when they arrive. The moment you receive it, please report it to the guild. Nudging her glasses up, the team leader smiled. That'll be enough for me. All of you are free to go. I wish the best of luck to all of you. The moment she announced the end of the lecture, I was among the first to stand and hurry back toward the office. I could feel a sharp glare burning into the back of my head as I walked away, but I ignored it, turning my wrist to check the time. They should already be here. Turning the corner and finally spotting my office, my pace slowed as I noticed a group waiting outside. As if sensing me at the same time, they stopped as well and turned to look in my direction. Boss. You're here, boss. You're finally here. Indeed, it was my 3 Slav coworkers, Noah, Ryan, and Joseph. We got your message recently, and we tried our best to rush here. We were actually in Sainsburg. It took a while for us to reach here. But you really wanted to have an update for the game? I can understand that you're unsatisfied, but why does the deadline need to be so short? Can't we take our time? We also don't have our working space, so. Don't worry about that. I unlocked my office door and walked in. At the same time, I took out a certain key and walked toward the far end of the room, inserting it into the nearby wall. If not for the fact that the section chief told me this is possible, I probably would have never known. I thought it was a one-off thing, but I guess not. The office is no regular office after all. What? The startled shouts behind me drew a faint smile to my lips as a door materialized before the 4 of us. I nudged Noah to close the one behind us, then pushed open the door ahead, revealing an all too familiar room. Turning back to face the 3 of them, I checked the time. We've got plenty of time starting now. Let's get started with the update. We've got to make sure to fix all the problems by the deadline. Space. Click, click, click. There existed a gap between people. Click, click. Over here, please look over here. An autograph, please give me an autograph. Look this way. There existed normal people, and there existed the paragons. Hey, I was here first, don't shove. What are you talking about? I was here way before you. The paragons weren't just immensely powerful. They were celebrities of a sort. Each one had millions of followers and commanded the attention of the entire world, be it actors or even sports stars. Nobody commanded as much attention as they did. One question, just one question. Have you received the invitation for the upcoming ranking? Do you think you will be able to rank higher than in the previous years? After the incident in Malavia, do you think that you have a shot at making it in the top 100? Could you even rank higher? What's your goal? There are rumors that you might even be demoted. What do you think about that possibility? And what do you think about Seth Thorne? There was a moment when you were with him. While there was no footage of the situation, we do know that you were working with him. What's your opinion about him? Do you think he can? Finally, the noise died down. The woman in question paused as she turned her attention to the reporters, her lips curving into a thin, graceful smile, while the sunlight glinted off her luscious blonde hair. I'm in a bit of a hurry, so I can't answer all of the questions. Do I believe that I will rank higher? I'm not quite sure myself. Considering my performance in Malavia, I'm more inclined to believe it's the opposite. We'll see in a couple of days. Having undergone extensive PR training, Geneva answered as smoothly as she could before politely dismissing the reporters and heading towards the entrance of her guild, where several people were waiting. Please wait. Geneva, Geneva. You've yet to answer my question, Geneva. The reporters hurried toward the guild's gates, only to be firmly stopped by the guards at the entrance. They protested loudly, but there was no way through, leaving them to watch as Geneva disappeared from view. Once inside the guild building, Geneva's practiced smile crumbled. She quickly reached into her pocket, pulled out a pack of gum, and stuffed a piece of gum in her mouth, chewing slowly. It tended to calm her. You've done well. Not long after, her manager, a woman with long black hair neatly tied into a bun, dressed in a gray suit and skirt, greeted her. The two then stepped into the elevator under the watchful gazes of those around them. Being the ace of the guild, this was only natural. Clank. As the elevator doors slid shut, Geneva leaned back against the metal wall, her chewing slowing down. She glanced at her manager just as he reached into his coat and pulled out a black envelope patterned with gold. We've received the letter. Geneva's chewing stopped, her expression relaxing a little. What do you think? She suddenly asked, looking away from her manager. Do you think I'll be able to rank higher this year? Everyone is saying otherwise. I don't think there's much you need to worry about. Her manager replied, a thin smile forming on her lips as she took out her tablet and began scrolling through several documents. Even without factoring in what happened in Malavia, your achievements this year are already quite impressive. That alone should be enough to secure you a spot in the top 100. And depending on how they assess your performance in Malavia, there's a good chance you could be ranked even higher. Is that so? Yes, please don't worry. Her manager reassured her, putting the tablet away. The reporters are just speaking nonsense. You'll no doubt rank higher. That's a relief. But, suddenly the manager hesitated, prompting Geneva to raise an eyebrow as she turned to look at her. Seeing the hesitation on her manager's face, Geneva spoke. What is it? Is there something that I need to be wary of? No, nothing particularly. Then, it's nothing important, she said quickly. I was just curious about something, but I don't think it's appropriate. What is it? You can ask if you want. Geneva frowned, finding her manager's behavior odd. Just as irritation began to surface, her manager spoke. I know it sounds silly, but I was just wondering, the manager said hesitantly. About the guy the reporters kept asking about, that Seth Thorne, what do you think of him? Do you think his results were because... She stopped mid-sentence. Her expression shifted as she noticed Geneva's face tighten ever so slightly, her jaw starting to work as she reached into her pocket and shoved even more gum into her mouth, chewing rapidly. Ding! The elevator stopped soon after. Geneva left without even looking at her manager. Chapter 499, You Can't Fail One. With the office back up and running, things began to proceed much more smoothly. Unfortunately, there was still a great deal to be done for the update to be perfect. Even though the numerical gap between 2.75 and 3 was only 0.25, it felt insurmountable. Regardless of all the additions that I added, it still didn't reach the desired score. Is this still not enough? Rubbing the bottoms of my eyes, I looked away from my laptop. A voice called out for me after. Boss, I've added the things that you've asked me to add. Ryan spoke up, his expression looking a little tired. Joseph followed right after. Same on my end, he said, not looking up. Though expanding the map is going to take longer than expected, scaling it outward without breaking continuity isn't exactly light work. He finally glanced up. Still, since you already rendered the entire hotel, it saves us a ridiculous amount of time. Noah hesitated, his voice lowering. I still find it hard to think that we can finish this on time, especially since you're leaving soon. I'm leaving. I looked at the members in my team curiously. What makes you think I'm leaving? Are you not? Why would I be? There was nothing scheduled for me over the next few days. The World Congress was the only event I needed to attend, and even that was still quite far off. Well, not exactly, but I definitely had time to finish the game before going. Noah suddenly pulled his attention away from his laptop. Wait, are you not going? Seriously? Going? Where would I be going? There's still time before the World Congress. Seeing the strange looks that I was receiving, I started to become confused. If not for the World Congress, what? Where would I? Realization struck me. You think I'm going to be in the ranking event? I almost found it amusing. Did they really think that highly of me? Are you not going to be? Of course not. It wouldn't make sense for me to be invited. While it was true that I'd achieved a few things during the Malavia incident, the fact remained that I was still only a first order in the eyes of the world. Followed by my report on the incident, I would struggle to believe people actually thought that I was worthy of getting a rank. This was also why many people believed I'd gotten to where I was purely through luck. Maybe not the general public, who were largely ignorant of the situation, but most others thought the same, that I'd simply been lucky. I wouldn't blame them, since I made sure to make it look that way during my report. After all, I was in no position to reveal too much, let alone my identity as the jester. There was also the simple fact that if anyone ever found out about the system, I would be dead. The plan was to slowly reveal my abilities with time. There's also the fact that I'm not quite in the fourth order yet. The doppelganger's body had been an exact copy of mine from before I turned, placing it firmly at the third order. Thanks to the emblance shards, I was able to stabilize my mind and suppress the side effects of everything that had been happening to me. Now, I could safely advance to the fourth order. I was only missing the fragments. For that, I can always ask the guild. "Are you really not going?" Joseph interrupted my thoughts, pulling out his phone and scrolling through several reports he'd apparently saved beforehand before showing them to me. "There are a lot of news articles about you. People are calling you one of the up-and-coming stars of the industry, a hidden gem. Some are even saying you might end up on the rankings." "That's nonsense. I'm still a first order. This is all just recency bias." "Hello?" The three of them exchanged glances, clearly unconvinced by my words. Watching them, I wasn't sure how to react. They were giving me far more credit than I felt I deserved. "Whatever, we're wasting too much time talking about this nonsense. Let's focus on the upcoming update. Don't worry about the invite. I won't be receiving it." I urged everyone to continue working after that. We didn't have much time, so we pushed ourselves until we reached the maximum duration we could remain inside the gate before finally leaving. By the time we were done, everyone looked haggard. I was similarly tired. Rubbing my tired eyes, I mumbled, "We managed to accomplish quite a lot today. Maybe we can actually get this done in time." "MHHH. Who? Lurers?" It felt like I was working with zombies. When I looked back, the three of them could barely meet my gaze, staring at the floor with hunched backs. Rubbing the bottom of my eyes, I opened the door and went back to the office. But that was also the moment I paused, especially when I took note of the black envelope resting on top of my desk. My heart tightened. Don't tell me it's another system item. Hesitantly, I moved toward the envelope and examined it carefully. I only relaxed when no strange pop-up appeared, finally reaching for the letter and opening it. Black Circle. Dear Seth, we are pleased to invite you to participate in the upcoming World Annual Ranking Update. This update represents an important milestone, bringing together key contributors and stakeholders to review results, highlight progress, and discuss the outlook for the year ahead. Your involvement and perspective would be a valuable addition to the discussion. Black Circle. Before I knew it, three heads had crowded in around me, their gazes shifting back and forth between me and the letter. Reading the letter again, I closed my eyes and set it down. Fuck me. Space. Here are the reports for those who were invited to the ranking event. A report was passed on to the guild master. The list is within our expectations, with a similar number of entrants as in previous years. But the assistant hesitated, eyes fixed on the report spread across the table. There was a hint of confusion on his face, as though one particular selection didn't sit right with him. As if sensing the assistant's uncertainty, the guild master's lips curled into a faint smile. Although he was usually smiling this smile, even the assistant could tell the guild master was pleased. He pressed his hand over the report. Proceed as we originally planned. Set up a PR campaign for each member. While rankings are mostly decided by achievements, there's also a voting aspect to consider. If we can secure the favor of enough voters, it'll work to our advantage. Yes, I have already contacted the PR team. We've already talked with several who we were already sure were going to be invited. They are willing to cooperate with us fully. That's good. But the assistant's eyes flicked down the page, stalled, then settled on a single name. He cleared his throat. We don't actually know how we can PR him. Across the table, a smile appeared. You don't have to worry about that. I've already got that sorted. You have? The assistant lifted his head, surprise flickering across his face. The guild master answered with a slow nod, eyes resting on the final name. His smile widened just a fraction as he interlocked his fingers before him. Yes, you can say, it'll be quite an interesting campaign. Chapter 500, You Can't Fail Too. Breaking Seth Thorne, Severed Stars Guild's undisclosed ace. Internal records confirm an unprecedented zero-failure clearance rate across classified operations. It's no wonder he has been invited to the ranking announcement. Will he be able to gain a rank? Will he be the first rookie to rise amongst the ranks of paragons? Breaking, unranked no more? Rookie operative Seth Thorne is linked to multiple high-difficulty gate resolutions. He is said to have never failed before, boasting several incredible achievements during his tenure at the Severed Stars Guild. Was Malavia not the first time the rookie performed such a shocking feat? Breaking, Severed Stars, silent asset. Analysts question how one recruit has accumulated elite-tier achievements without promotion or public acknowledgement. Breaking, untouchable. Severed Stars GUI'd position over a super rookie who has yet to fail once. Value soars to 15 million. As if the invitation itself wasn't shocking enough, the articles that followed were enough to give me a heart attack several times over. Undisclosed ace, unprecedented zero-failure clearance, untouchable, value soars. The more articles I read, the more it felt like my stomach was being twisted and squeezed. What in the world are they thinking? It was baffling. Was this the work of the PR team? No, I don't think that's the case. The PR team wouldn't be bold enough to pull something like this. And even if they were, they wouldn't be pushing this kind of nonsense so aggressively. There was only one person who could drive a narrative like this and push it this hard. The Guild Master. There was no doubt about it. This was the Guild Master's idea. But why? Why was he doing this? Is he trying to spread my name or something? But why would he do that? He's already got several people to do that. I don't see why he would want to push me to this extent, especially when they're hailing me as someone who has never failed before. But thinking about it, he wasn't exactly wrong. I had yet to fail even once. So far, everything I'd done had gone smoothly. I hadn't failed a single dungeon dive, and my clearance record was monstrous, especially when I took into account that most of it had been achieved by the doppelganger. This is bad. I pressed on to another article. Breaking, Seth Thorne's records finally made public. Witness the unprecedented rise of the super rookie. Just where did someone like this come from? Sure enough, my records were exposed for the entire world to see. Holy shit, is this true? It has the BUA emblem right here. There's no doubt about the fact that they're real. WTF, why does he have so many S-clearance grades? What sort of monster is this? Wait, there are videos too. Holy shit, he's like a machine. He's exactly the same as in the stream. Fucking repost this to those bastards saying that he's just lucky. I bet they'll be eating their words soon. But holy hell, he actually never failed before. How is that possible? Even Latcher has failed on multiple occasions, let alone being in the top 10 in the rankings. What sort of monster is this? TBH, I think you guys are overblowing the situation. Yes, it's true that he has never failed before, but it's also true that he's been dealing with low-level gates. Wait until he goes into higher-ranked ones. The top quickly started to trend. At first, not many people paid attention to what was being said, especially with everyone focused on those announced for the upcoming ranking renewal. But as more people began discussing it, the topic gained traction, trending more and more. Some argued that I'd simply been lucky, repeating all the points I was already familiar with. Others pushed back, countering them with the evidence laid out in the articles. The topic started to become even more heated, and soon I received a new nickname. Zira, as in the number of failures I had. Let me talk to the guild master. He's busy at the moment, even I can't get in contact with him. It doesn't matter, I can wait. As I said, you can't do that. The guild master isn't even at the guild right now. No one knows where he is since he's handling the situation surrounding the ranking announcement, but setting that aside. The section chief's eyes narrowed as he crossed his arms and leaned back in his chair. Since when were you someone who could speak to the guild master at will? He asked. Even I don't have that privilege, yet you talk as if he'd answer you whenever you pleased. His gaze sharpened. Are you truly unaware of the difference in position between the two of you? Well, that's because... The words caught in my throat. It dried all at once, my mouth suddenly empty as I stared at him, my mind scrambling for an answer that wouldn't come. I'd been so focused on understanding why this was happening that I'd completely overlooked something far more obvious. My own place in all of this. Indeed, I was merely a regular employee of the guild. Even though I was currently being pushed by the guild, there was a big difference in status between the guild master and me. Even Kyle and the others hardly ever saw the guild master, and the fact that I could see him as I wished was suspicious in itself. How could someone of my stature even talk to the guild master? After taking a moment to process the situation, I lifted my head to look at the section chief. Then I relaxed my shoulders and leaned back against the chair. I just wanted to talk to him about the current situation with the articles. And what makes you think that he's responsible for them? I just know. Damn it, I can't even say that. Rubbing his chin, the section chief took out his phone and scrolled through several items, presumably the articles about me. Well, I can see why you're concerned. This is the most aggressive push I've seen in some time. They didn't even do this during Clara's first ranking event. He scrolled down again, his tone lowering. As far as I'm aware, this is likely a stunt by the PR team, created to capitalize on your recent fame from the Malavia incident. Bullshit. This was obviously the guild master's work. Taking a deep breath to calm myself down, I asked. But do they have to be this aggressive about it? They are talking quite a lot of nonsense. Are they? The section chief put the phone down, rubbing the black bags beneath his eyes. As far as I'm aware, there isn't a single lie in those statements. You've never failed, and your clearance record is that impressive. He paused, eyes steady. None of what's being said is technically wrong. But that's the problem, I calmly stated, leaning forward a bit while meeting the section chief's haggard gaze head-on. Even though none of what they're saying is wrong, the real problem is that everything hinges on the idea that I've never failed before. I paused, lips pressed together as I weighed the thought. What happens if I do fail? The question lingered before I finished it, my voice unconsciously lowering. What am I supposed to do then? That's obvious. The section chief responded without hesitation, as though the answer should have been self-evident. His eyes never left mine, his finger tapping slowly against the wooden table. Eventually, his words fell. And, don't fail. My breath caught before I realized I was holding it. If you think the guild master is behind this, he continued calmly, then that's the message he's sending. Another tap. From this moment on, failure is no longer an option. The room felt smaller, a certain weight pressing down on me from all directions. Just don't fail. Space. Author note, there's been a little mix-up. The section chief of the hoarding department for the branch guild is called Clement White, not Steve Horn. I got confused.